Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to try and adjust some light levels. Let me see how much of a difference that makes. Well, it's not better, is it? I'm going to go on this side here. So my purpose with this live stream is a little impromptu, but my purpose is really to say hi, to kind of build a bit of community here. And I'd really love any questions and comments or feedback that you have. And I just thought I'd start off by laying down a few simple ideas on this topic of is he the one? And then maybe that will stimulate some of your questions. You can let me know whether you agree or disagree or kind of what's true for you. So I just want to say a few hellos. Bianca, hi from Denmark. Thanks for being here. Hey, Meredith. Yeah, fun to be live with you guys. This will be super organic and it's impromptu. Oh, you're in Canada. Which part of Canada? And yeah, questions totally welcome. Hi, Emily, Orange County, California. Oh, Toronto, awesome. Hi from SF. That's great. I love this. I love the global nature of this. It really appeals to my global citizen. So I'm going to lay a few things down. So is he the one? I have a sort of theory that in some ways we make this question harder than it needs to be. That's going to be sort of my opening gambit, is that we often think it's really complex to work out, like, is this guy the one? And I want to try and reduce it to its, like Einstein said, like, let's make it simple, but no simpler. So I'm going to try and reduce this to the simplicity that I see in it. And there's kind of three main things I want to talk about. The first thing is he available for partnership? So I'm assuming that if you're watching this right now, that you want some kind of committed relationship, settling down, marriage, some kind of long-term partnership, whatever that might look to you. So that's kind of the premise of this, that is what you want from your dating. If you don't want that, that's totally fine. I want you to get what you want from your dating. But this seems to be the kind of crux of it for a lot of women is, I want something that's investable. I want something that I can put my heart and soul into, but I just don't know whether this guy is that. So the first thing is really to just get good at noticing whether you're even interested in the guy or not. What is a guy available for? And I think that's a mix of being willing to have those conversations up front, the availability conversation, and taking it, not taking it personally. So is he available for something, irrespective of whether that thing is actually with you? And then looking at actions, because in many ways, I think with guys, actions speak louder than words. And sometimes as guys, we're not that good at knowing whether we are available for a relationship, because we might consider that we're, quote, good relationship material, right? That we would be a good person to be in relationship with. But we may not notice that there are stages to masculine development when we are more or less available for something that's committed and something that's going to be worth investing in. So ask him, be as objective as possible, and then really notice over time. If he hasn't texted you for 5 days, in my book, unless he's had an accident and he's unconscious, or he told you that he was going to be remote on an oil rig and he has no access to communications, he's not your guy, right? The guy that wants to be with you is not going to go 5 days without communicating with you, unless there's some really good reason for that. So a lot of what I'm really encouraging here is actually for you to be able to dial in your own intuition. Because as I see it, again, simplistically, there's intuition and there's doubt. And oftentimes this, if it's winning, we're up here, we're thinking, analyzing, what did he mean? What did he say? What could this mean? What's he available for? And it's your head taking you away from your true intelligence, which sits lower, right? Which is kind of your heart intelligence, your body intelligence. And you probably have a pretty good intuition if you start to dial it in. So if you let your intuition tell you, you might get a different answer about what's he really available for. So I'm going to say a few more hellos. Hey, Linda from Seattle. We've got Kylie from Australia. Hey, I think you say that. Is that Joanna or Loana? Hello from Romania. From Eastern Europe. Oh, wow. St. Kitts. I've always been jealous of people in St. Kitts. Sounds like a lovely place. Yes, Bianca, you're German and living in Denmark. You're welcome. I'm glad to do a live chat. Explain available and unavailable emotionally. That's a good question, Linda. Hey to Texas, Jennifer, and Stacy in Oregon. And Lindsay, thanks for saying that I'm awesome. I appreciate that. So, available and unavailable. So the way that I'm using it here, I'm actually saying, is he available for a partnership? Is he available to invest a decent amount of his energy ongoingly in probably for most of you, what you want is a monogamous relationship? And I think one of the best ways of really knowing about that is if he is showing up as available in other areas of his life as well. Most guys, if they haven't kind of quote got their shit together, got their stuff together, got a sense that their career is going somewhere, that their mission is somewhere, most guys, if they have a more masculine essence, they're not going to be looking to really invest in a partnership, because it's kind of like their self has to be good enough in some ways to order to be like, yeah, I want to extend and take care of you, or attune to you, show up for you, be present for you, give you attention, love on you. For most guys, if they're doing that and they don't have their kind of stuff together, they might be what I call the emotionally available, unavailable guy, who can be confusing. And I was one back in the day. So it's like, and now I'm starting to put the love relationship kind of way ahead of my own career and my own purpose and my own kind of backbone and my own integrity. And for most guys, and I'm talking in gross orienting generalization, that's not really where they step into a committed partnership from. And so some of those guys confuse women because they're so heart open and they're here and they're present and they want to attune to you and be in connection with you. And they are really good at it. They can be really good at it, really in their heart in a certain way. But you need the heart with the backbone, right? You need the heart with, oh, but I've also got solidity in my own life. I've also got my own 2 feet in the ground. I also have will to follow through on the things that I want to do in my own life. And if the relationship is kind of a substitute for that, that's not really a great recipe for polarity in relationship. And it's not really a great recipe for a guy that is ready and willing to commit to something. So I'm wondering if that is making sense to you. And you asked that question about available. That's how I'm orienting to available. I have a video, if you haven't seen it, about the 4 types of emotionally unavailable guy. And then there's this kind of bonus 5th one, which is this emotionally available, unavailable guy. Go watch that. If you haven't watched that video, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And obviously you want to learn how to spot emotionally unavailable guys. But you also want to really learn how to spot an available guy, right? Like, let's kind of magnetize to some extent to what we want. An available guy is someone that to some extent is going to show up with consistency, who's got enough going for him in his own life and is clear that he wants partnership. Now, you may have to discover whether that partnership is what he wants with you and whether you want with him. It's just so much easier, I think, if you start with someone that has the basic premise that, yeah, I'm kind of looking for my person. I'm kind of ready for a relationship. And there's nothing wrong with guys that want to date or guys that want to do all sorts of things, each to their own. But most of you here want something committed. So that's really the kind of essence of what I'm talking to. So a few more hellos. Hello to Hoa from Kansas. Hey, Nali. And hey, Patricia. And yes, Bianchi, you want to learn how to spot available guys? Yeah, totally. I think that's probably the thing that a lot of people want to hear. And Zari, hey, as well. Totally understand better the guy in my life who's available and unavailable. He's so confusing. Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. So anytime that you are completely confused by a guy, right? It could be that, the sort of John Gray, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? There are some things that are different between men and women, again, in gross orienting generalization. And if he's really confusing you, like he's hot and he's cold and he's available and he's unavailable, I just want to take a bit of a stand for simplicity. He's probably not your guy, right? Because if he's really your guy and he's really going to want to show up for you, and by the way, it's easier to show up when you're falling in love with someone, right, than it is when you've been with them for a long time in some ways, because there's all the romantic infatuation, the lust, the initial chemistry, all that stuff. So if he's not showing up for you in that stage, what has you believe that he's going to show up for you when he's just worked a 60-hour week and you guys have been together for several years and he's tired? So there's also a little bit of, if he's that confusing, maybe the confusion is that you are surprised that you're still attracted to him. Right? Sometimes that can be the confusion. Your system might be completely arrested by him. And if you had any sort of unavailability from your dad or a masculine caregiver, or even just caregivers generally, that might be intoxicating to your system, because your system might be pattern matching for something in the past. So you might want to distinguish, are you confused in the sense if you and I were sitting down and I were interviewing you and saying, look, tell me objectively as you can, is this guy available? Is he consistent? Does he take initiative? Does he show up? That might not be where you're confused. Where you might be confused is, he doesn't treat me that well and I still go back. I still go back for more. And that's where you sometimes have to be really kind to yourself and learn how to draw a boundary, even when your system, your chemistry, everything is kind of inflamed in his direction, you might have to learn how to be good to yourself and be like, that's not actually good for me, right? Just in the same way that there are intoxicating substances that, you know, that's really just not good for me. Like when I'm drunk, I don't make great decisions. And when I'm drunk on him and I lose my objectivity, I don't make great decisions. And if you need to, you enroll someone to help you, right? You enroll a coach, or you enroll a good friend or a therapist or someone that can kind of hold your hand as you are walking that path of withdrawing, holding your boundary, going no contact. And for most of us, that's not nice, right? It's like a cold turkey experience. It is kind of like a withdrawal from an addictive substance. And it really serves you in the long run to get closer to what it is that you want. So let me jump back in here. Is it true that timing can be off? Yes, it is true that timing can be off. If timing is off, I think what you do, again, just to go for the simplicity of this, and actually just, I don't know if any of you guys follow me on Instagram. I'm Real Jack Butler on Instagram. I just posted something on this, which is you basically say, I really like you. If you were available, I would want to pursue something with you. You're not available in the way that I need or the kind of relationship that I want. So I really want to go no contact with you. I want to draw a boundary here lovingly. You haven't done anything wrong. If you change in the future and you are more available for a relationship and you want to pursue that with me, you are welcome to give me a call. But I'm going to go live my life and I'm going to be open to dating. I'm not waiting for you. I'm actually throwing myself into my life fully. And if you're available for something else, you can give me a call. I'm not even saying I would date you. I'm just saying you're welcome to give me a call. I think that's how you handle it, because if you try to create something and the season's not there, the season's just not there. And it generally leads to a place called pain, right? Which is that you want something more than he's available for. Also, it might be that you want partnership and he's available for companionship. I'm not making companionship lower than partnership. I'm just saying it's a different level of commitment. And if a guy is really only available for companionship or lovership, right, something kind of sexual romantic, but that doesn't really have any commitment behind it, you don't convert that easily into a partnership. The way that you convert that into a partnership, in my humble opinion, is that you say no. And then if he wants to come back at some point and he's available for partnership and you want to play with him, great. And he may not come back, right? So that's the painful part. You may have to just fully let him go. But at least then you take a stand and you're clear with the universe. I want a relationship with a guy that's going to show up for me, and I'm not going to fool around with guys that aren't. It's really hard to take something from here and convert it. Much easier to start here. And then, there's already enough challenges in partnership to make it work normally for most of us. So why would you start with someone that's just not even on the same playing field as you are? Right on point. Thanks, Zari. Namaste from India. Awesome. We're in India. Been to India 3 times, I think. Pune and Goa. And I love India. I'm wondering if women should initiate contact with guys. I have this notion of guys who should always take the initiative no matter how shy he is, but I might be wrong. So that's a good question. Wherever possible, I try not to create completely concretized rules to encourage you, me, any of us, to be in touch with our intuition. So is it true that there are some guys who are kind of shy and who are reticent about showing their feelings? Absolutely. And I've been that guy where it's like, yeah, I actually keep my cards close to my chest. I don't declare easily that I might have an interest in someone. So you can green light a guy, which you just say something to him like, I like you, or I would love to get to know you more, or I really appreciate hanging out with you. I want to hang out more. So you don't necessarily have to make the next date happen, but you open the door for him. And then if you open the door enough and he doesn't step through it, then it's like, okay, maybe this guy isn't really interested. Or at some point you could just say, I'm really interested in you, and this is really vulnerable to share, but I'm curious if you might be interested in me. Like, would you like to get to know me more? And for most of us, that's hard because we don't want to handle the potential rejection. And I'd encourage you to practice there, because it can save you a lot. Much rather that you go home for a few hours with your tail between your legs because you like the guy and he's not into you, than you try for a long time to pursue him and he's not available, and then you're creating more pain, right? So you can also, I'm a fan as much as possible of having a somewhat authentic conversation and seeing what's there. So yeah, there are definitely some guys that aren't fully initiative takers. You might also come across a guy that once you green light him, then you move through a threshold, and now he's like, okay, he feels kind of secure that you like him, and then he pursues you. So that can be possible as well. What you probably don't want to create is the ongoing polarity that you're pursuing him, right? Because most of the time, most women want to be pursued, and they want a guy that has some of that initiative. The other guy that you want to be careful with is the guy who's so into you, right? He's so into you. He wants every hour of your day. You're the bee's knees. You're his everything. That guy often hurts people as well because, again, he's not really rooted in reality. He's not really grounded in his own life. And suddenly you become his love object. You open up all these fantasies for him, but it's not sober. And at a certain point, that cycle tends to close, and then you can really see what's available. So if a guy is like over the top into you, it's sometimes useful to put the brakes on, because what might be happening is there's a lot of projection, there's a lot of chemistry, there might be a lot of sexual chemistry, but whether that is really, this is a good guy for me to be in a relationship with, you can take your time. I'm a fan of don't take too long, but don't take too little, right? If you are texting with a guy all the time and you've never met him, I really would encourage you to stop the texting and get in person and get some real time with him. If you've been with a guy for 7 years and he doesn't know whether he wants to commit to you, you need to be really in the tough and heartfelt conversations with him. Some guys take a long time. Some guys are slow moving, but sometimes guys need a little bit of a loving ultimatum. Not my way or the highway, but just, hey, I really want to settle down with someone and I'd love it to be you. And you can take a little time. You don't have to tell me the day, but I do want to be in the conversation about what's really going on here. So, wow, you're awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. How to handle a guy who claims he's been hurt in a previous relationship would lead him to not being available to invest anymore. Is this mean an excuse or a polite way to say he's not interested? That's a great question. Probably you're going to have to use your intuition to discern the specifics of what's going on there. Yeah, it's true that guys can be hurt, and any of us that have been hurt, right? Sometimes consciously or subconsciously, we make that decision. I'm not going to get hurt like that again. A lot of us made that kind of decision in our childhood, right? So we kind of create a little bit of a shell, armor, some invulnerability. What I would be encouraging is to get into the heartfelt conversations with that kind of guy and let him know that it's okay if he's been hurt. That if you really want to be with him, that you might be really willing to work that with him, and there's some kind of investment and commitment that's going to be important to you. So you're not going to leave that out. You might be willing to wait for some weeks and some months or however long for that to kind of coalesce. So again, it's like a not too little, not too much. You don't want to cut that guy straight out, but you also want to let him know that being in love, being in a relationship, part of that is that you get hurt. God, you're opening yourself to someone. You're opening your most vulnerable parts. It's like, yeah, that happens, and we've all probably got many, micro and macro hurts that we're walking around with. What you don't want to do is become that guy's healer, right? Because that's a pattern I've seen where it's like you love on him because you want to help him kind of heal, and it sets up a slightly difficult dynamic in the relationship where it's kind of healer-healy, mentor-mentee, and that's not necessarily the kind of peer-to-peer partnership that I think most of you probably want. So the other thing you can do with that kind of guy is encourage him to do the work, right? That a guy who's coming into his masculine maturity might be like, yeah, I'm wounded. I need to do some work. I need to get therapy. I need to go on some programs. I need to get help. I need to get a coach, and encourage him to do that work. I just wouldn't try and substitute that you're going to do that work for him or you're going to be that person. Yes, being vulnerable is indeed the hardest thing, but authenticity is priceless. I agree with that. I think authenticity is the journey that a lot of us are on. If you have a deeply ingrained self-fulfilling prophecy that this relationship will fall apart, how do you find the balance of dating but not also sabotaging the relationship at the guy's expense? So probably in that instance, you've got some work to do, right? Because you're noticing that you have a belief that is really limiting your experience in relationships. So I'm curious what things you're doing to try to relax that belief. I just want to say something quickly about beliefs. It's like my two-stage process. If you have a disempowering belief, better than that usually is to create as best you can a more empowering belief, right? So if your belief is this relationship will fall apart, you could have the belief, I don't know what's going to happen in this relationship, right? So now it's not like you're having to believe something that you don't really believe. It's like, you know what? You don't really know. Life is bigger than you. Relationship is bigger than any of us. So you can kind of turn it from a doubt, which is what this might be. I doubt it's going to work. I imagine it's going to fall apart, to a curiosity, right? And a curiosity is, I don't actually know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where it's going with this guy. I'm going to stay in my curiosity whilst I tap into my intuition. So step one is often to create a more empowering or just less committed belief. You start to erode the certainty that you know that it's not going to work. And then at a certain point in your development, you try to have as few beliefs as possible. And as few beliefs as possible is, I don't really have to believe anything about this guy because I don't want to create a belief. I just want to see, I want to know. And I value my knowing. You can't see me here, but I'm putting my hands on my belly. I value my knowing and my intuition more than I do my beliefs, because mostly beliefs are, they're valuable, they're shortcuts, they're heuristics, right? They're frames that we use to make sense of reality. But at a certain point, our beliefs become an obstruction to reality because we're fitting everything into a belief, and reality is kind of bigger than any particular belief. That's how I see it anyway. I think you have a clear message. He doesn't want to invest. Do you want an equal relationship? Do you want to invest and have nothing back? Yeah, I mean, look, you guys, there's 5, I don't know what time zone it is. There's some of you are in Europe, right? So it's like midnight or gone on a Saturday, and you guys are here and we're talking about relationships, right? So you are investing in your education. You want to make these things better. And my belief is that there's some other guy out there. Now, as guys generally, yep, we might not have done the work that a lot of women have done to invest as much, but there's a guy who is at least turned on to, yeah, I want to be in an equal partnership with someone. And that is a better guy to try and choose, even if off the bat, that guy is going to be less attractive in certain ways to you. Because part of what I have, and I know it from my own hard-earned experience, there can be a kind of attraction that is arresting, that is not your person. It's something else. It's sexual chemistry. It's early pattern matching. It's archetypically someone that looks similar than your parent, particularly the one of the opposite sex, if you had that. And that level of arresting isn't normally what stabilizes out, in my experience, to, yeah, we can do life together. We can be a team. We can face life's challenges. We can build a life together. And that's not to say you can't have amazing romantic lovership with that kind of arresting energy. You probably can. But you don't want to confuse that for, this is someone that I'm going to invest in. What are the best ways to meet partnership available men? I think one proxy for that question is, are they doing the work, right? So by doing the work, I mean, are they going to seminars? Are they going on programs? Are they buying products? Are they reading books? Are they in conversations or groups that orient to being, more loving, more self-loving, more aware? Like there's a bunch of men out there that are doing the work. And I think anytime that you can get into those kind of circles, that's probably a good thing. I think the other thing is you just kind of ask. And, I remember an old business mentor of mine. He would say, pretty much, I'll give anyone an hour of my time, right? And this was like a busy guy who had been really successful in business. So he had no shortage of people wanting his attention. But the thing about giving an hour is you give an hour. And in that hour, you tend to, you intuit, is this person worthy of me giving them more time? So some people get very tight up about, well, I'm not going to date this, I'm not going to date that. And they almost close the intelligence too much. They're too precious. They're too skeptical. I think you can give a lot of guys a little bit of time and then have your intuition dial, is this guy really available? What does he say about it? Like, does he seem mature to you? Does he seem emotionally mature? Does he seem like he's aware? Does he seem like he's done some work? Is he aware that there's sometimes difficult dynamics in relationship? Does he have a reflection on why he maybe is single and doesn't want to be? Like, I think all of those things you can bring into some of the early stages of your relating with someone. Wow, thank you. Makes total sense. I really like the spiritual aspect. Yeah, I do think this intersection of relationship and inner work, spiritual growth, I am super excited about it because I think it is the kind of the edge for a lot of us. And this expression, relationship as path. I used to kind of hear that and be like, I don't know if that resonates. And now I feel like I really get that. It's like, wow, if you want to do certain kinds of deep inner work, relationship is such a working surface. It's such a mirror. It's going to show you the places that you close down, that you withhold, that you're defended. It's like, and if you can find someone that wants to do that with you, that's a really precious thing. Do not be the man healer. Straight way to codependency. Well said. Now I understand why it's important to be vulnerable. Yeah, I mean, I feel for you, right? Because the dilemma that most of us are in, and I think it's particularly true probably for you if you're a woman watching this, on the one hand, we want to be vulnerable, right? We want to open our heart. We want to be declared. We want to share our real experience. We want to open to someone. And on the other hand, we have a whole load of bad experiences that sometimes we opened and it didn't go great, right? We got hurt. We weren't seen. Maybe we weren't seen in our childhood. Maybe some guy opened us up and then walked out, right? That's sometimes the challenge of intimacy without commitment. So that's the essence of the dilemma. What I encourage is that you titrate, right? You calibrate the vulnerability. You don't need to go to a first date and just spill all the beans, so to speak. You don't need to get to an inappropriate level of intimacy. It's almost like you want a mutual looping of self-disclosure, right? That a mutual deepening of intimacy and vulnerability. And over time, the trust develops where you're like, yeah, maybe I can open more fully to this guy now that we have something that's perhaps more sustainable or more committed. I am a fan of using vulnerability as filter, right? And when I'm saying vulnerable, here's what I don't mean. There's a kind of thing that people call vulnerable where it's like you basically go to your wound and you start talking out the story of your wound, right? How hard your life has been, or how devastated you were, or how abused you were. And there's a time and a place for that. And I hope that you get the chance to share that story. You've just got to notice if you're sometimes so attached to the story that what you think is vulnerability is actually nothing new is coming through you. There's a kind of vulnerability rooted in presence, which means you don't really know where the conversation's going. You don't really know what might be revealed from you, right? There's a kind of aliveness. There's a sort of on the edge of the seatness. And that's the kind of vulnerability that I would really orient you towards, rather than necessarily like, let me tell this person my deepest, darkest secrets. You can absolutely tell them that if you want, but there's a kind of vulnerability where basically what it means is you let go of your control, that you know where this conversation needs to go, or you know how the story needs to be told. That's the kind of presence-based vulnerability that I think is really powerful. And it's also super compelling to guys who know how to be present, right? Not every guy knows how to be present, but you probably want to be with one that does, because it can be some of his greatest gift to you. Dated way back, came back into my life and told me I was the one, love of his life, the one. Why tell someone this information? Better of not knowing, then ended it confusing. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So a couple of things. One is, generally, when you say to someone, I love you, what you might mean by that is, in this moment, there is love within me, right? My experience in this moment is love. So sometimes in romantic infatuation, your heart is bursting with this kind of love, and you say to someone, I love you. That may or may not mean anything about my commitment into the future with you. It might just mean that in this moment, the true thing to say is there is love, right? And that's what I'm feeling. So I think sometimes that gets confused. And as a guy, if you aren't used to having your heart burst open, and you are the person that I'm in romantic infatuation with and my heart's bursting, yeah, I might say like all sorts of things. But whether that's grounded in a sober reality, I mean, sometimes it's just hard to be sober when you're falling in love. Let's just say it that way. Sometimes you have to hang around long enough to be on the other side to know, is there something here that's actually real and worth pursuing? So a guy may be having an experience with you and it's true. It just might not mean that he's available for partnership with you. And that's where the distinction just sometimes gets tricky. What I encourage you to notice is the long-term thing sometimes has some kind of unsexiness about it, right? In the sense that it's got a little bit more of a, we can hang out, we can do life, we can be good friends, we can be lovers, we can be around each other. There's a sort of natural cadence to the connection. It's not that one of us wants way more connection than the other one. It's not that you spend the weekend and then I never hear from you for a week. There's more of a day-to-dayness of a quality. And that day-to-dayness may be a better indicator of whether you are the one than whether a guy at one point when his heart was bursting, he said, I love you, or you are the one. Right? You're the one is normally something that's backed up by, I'm going to show up for you. You're my person, and I'm going to show up for you ongoingly this week, this month, this year. That's really when the guy knows you're the one. And hey, sometimes those don't even work out, but there's a sobriety. It's like he's willing to make a commitment to you. And that commitment, I think a substantive commitment, whether that's we're going to, settle down or marry or, hand fast for a year, as some people do. That's sometimes more significant, I think, than the little things that get said. Yes, I like that. Be curious. Yeah, curiosity versus doubt. I learned that probably 5 years ago. I'd say that's one of the biggest distinctions that has shifted my life. So I'm really a big fan of that. Aloha back at you. It's not good to be unequally yoked. Absolutely, it's not good to be unequally yoked. My problem is that I attract men who want to be with me for the wrong reasons. I'm very feminine and sensual. I love to express the side of my being, but at the same time, I'm so much more. Yeah. Okay, so my question for you is, what is your relationship to your own masculine? Because for a lot of us, what we're trying to do is integrate, right? So yes, we're trying to express our dominant essence, which might be masculine and feminine. We also sometimes need enough of an access to the other side of the polarity. Otherwise, we're always kind of looking for it for completion in relationship. And sometimes that doesn't work. You need sometimes have enough of each for there to be a kind of integrative stability into the relationship. Or I'm curious if there are sides of you that you're not able to show, and maybe why is that, right? Sometimes if you're super in your feminine, and that obviously can be really attractive to a lot of guys, what you might attract is a guy who's super in his masculine in a certain way and hasn't really developed some of his feminine, right? His ability to sense and feel and be receptive to the moment. And you might want a little bit of a balance. That's the idea that comes to mind for me. I love your work. Let's just remove this person that's not being very helpful. Please stop. Okay. Yes, great point. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. I'm wondering what amount of time is reasonable for a man to stop seeing other women. That's a good question. I'm falling for him. I know he's falling for me. Should I trust that it will happen naturally? I mean, I would really encourage you to bring that into the conversation that you have with him, because I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I do know that there's often a point as a guy where you want that as a mutual agreement, right? So he actually wants to bring that up because he's like, yeah, I would feel good if you didn't see people and I didn't see people, because this is something that I really want to pursue. So I put it this way. If he's the right guy, if he's the guy that wants to be in relationship with you, then my sense is that he's not gonna mind if you ask that question. Right? So there's probably not a sense that, oh, wow, you've prematurely asked me to be monogamous, and I take that really offensively. I think that the right guy, he's going to see that as a good sign he's going to see that as a good sign of you wanting to pursue the relationship. So I wouldn't be too afraid of that, particularly if you notice that the place that it comes from in you is not just a kind of a defense or a neediness. It's sort of like, yeah, I kind of like you, and in my power, I kind of want to be in a committed, or emergently committed monogamous relationship with you. So if a guy is like, oh, whoa, that's too early, I think that's probably an indication that he might not be your guy, or you can trust him to say, there's a point at which that might feel good and I'm not quite there yet, right? So I also think it's a good conversation to be in. Okay, I think I've gotten through all your questions. I'm happy to hang around here if there's more. Hey, Georgia from Australia, thanks for being here. Let me know what questions you have. Let me know what experiences you've had. If there's anything that is in this territory of you've been confused about a guy, you don't know if he is the one, maybe you want him to be the one, but you don't know if he's the one. I do want to distinguish again that there is a difference in the energies of lovership and partnership. So the way I use it, I'm talking about lovership, something that has a clear romantic or sexual energy to it, but it doesn't have the sort of consistency and cadence of connection, right? So you might have a lovership where, when you're in a certain part of the world, right? If you're traveling, you're like, oh, if I'm in your area, I will look you up, right? And those things can be beautiful and romantic, but they just don't have that sense of like, yeah, I'm going to be calling you and you're going to be calling me, and that's going to be happening most days of the week. Or a lovership can be there's really good physical and sexual connection between us, but we don't really have a heart connection. Or we don't really have a mental connection, or we don't really have a spiritual connection. For most of us, we're going to need at least a minimum effective dose of physical, spiritual, and kind of emotional connection in order for something to be interesting and sustainable over the long term. So that can be another way that you think of that question. Question here: how do you feel about 30-day no contact? I'm quite a fan of no contact. You have to discern in a little bit in the particular situation what is the right amount of time. It probably has some relationship to how serious and how long you've been connected, right? So sometimes 30 days could be light, right? Some people might need 60, 90, 6 months. It's all kind of negotiable. The reason that you're doing that is to start to remove the attachment bond, right? Even if you weren't securely attached, maybe your attachment behaviors were all over the place with this person, but there's normally a way that you're kind of in a bond of some description, or a relationship of energetic of some description, and you're actually allowing that to dissolve. That's one of the reasons that you go no contact. The other reason you go no contact could be the situation where you say, look, I like you and I'd like more with you, and you're not available for it. So I'm going to pursue life. And actually in that time, what you don't want to do is too quickly turn a romantic connection into a friendship. Because I think what it does is it stops you actually doing that underlying releasing of the relationship. And most of the time, even if that is painful, you actually want to do it, right? It's sort of like a necessary pain in order to open up that space, either for something new with that person or for something new with someone else, right? If you skip it, you tend to just kind of keep it down and it's there kind of repressed, and then you don't really have an open and available field. And you may want to go friends with them because you actually don't want to feel the rejection or the difficulty of not being in contact with them. So no contact can be really hard. And here's the other thing about, we say is 30 days the right amount of time. If you get to the end of the no contact period and you have that kind of jumpy, like, oh, can't wait to kind of text them and see them or see how they're doing, I would encourage you to continue the no contact period, right? Because it's like there's a sort of way that it hasn't resolved in your system. And it might just be, hey, we kind of just didn't see each other 30 days, but really we're back in the same place. So you have to kind of be honest with yourself. It can be a really good time to get reflection from someone, a coach, therapist, or just a good friend who knows you and knows what's going on. Hope that helped. I actually never thought about it. I usually express and nurture my inner masculine, but there may be parts I don't nurture or want to express. Yeah, we're just inviting that as an inquiry. I'm curious where you get to with it. Just logging in. Judy, welcome. Gacha Style is giving some French. Cliquez là-bas. Well, okay. Thank you for that. Glad that I actually understand that. Recently let go of someone who was not good for me in my life. I told him I needed to move forward and would not be, and we're going to kind of blocked him, more so for me. Awesome. Oh, hey, Nicole. Hey, good to see you. So I like hearing that. That is the essence of this, right? In some ways is that you take the stand. You take the stand for yourself, for your kind of self-honor, self-respect, self-worth, for just your own knowing about what you need, right? Because most of us at some level have a kind of knowing about what we need in our lives. You also honor them, right? There's no point tying up a guy's attention if you're like, yeah, I don't really see you as my guy, or I don't really see you as the one that I want to pursue, invest, feel protected by, build something with. So there's no shame, I think. And if your concern is, well, I hurt his feelings, I really want to encourage you to do this, because if that's your dominant thing, you might be a little bit over there with him, right? And I want guys to be in their heart. I'm not asking for guys to be unnecessarily hurt, but I also want guys to be able to be guys in a certain way. And part of that is, if you're not into me as a guy, I want to know that. I don't want to be wasting my time also. I don't need you to mother me. I don't need you to be my caregiver. Be sensitive to me. Don't tell me I'm a jerk and you never want to see me again, but just in the most relational way that you can, tell the truth, right? That is the integration that most of us are looking for here, is how do you tell the truth from a place of being connected? And, sometimes I fall well short of this. Sometimes I tell the truth from a place where I'm actually a little bit defended, and then it comes off with more, anger and aggression maybe than it needs to. And then you'll hear people say, oh, facts don't care about your feelings. Well, here's the equal and opposite truth of that, is feelings don't care about your facts. Right? So if you're feeling something, that is actually relevant for you, whether or not it's in an objective reality. And what most of us want to do is learn how to be with our feelings and the facts. The facts are what's true for you, what's true for your heart. And you can't manufacture that. If someone's in your heart, they're kind of in your heart. And if they're not, they're kind of not. And the feelings are, I want to attune to you and be sensitive and notice where you are and be in my heart as I tell you. A heart that you're in as you tell someone the truth will be much less likely to hurt them, because you're there as well with your own vulnerability, and it makes all the difference. So that's the practice, I think. In my experience, commitment and monogamy are two different things and can be spoken to me. Yeah, absolutely. Commitment and monogamy are two different things. Yeah, I think a certain kind of commitment might imply a certain kind of monogamy for most of us, but I think it's good to be explicit. And there are plenty of serial monogamist men, and probably women as well, right? Where you're actually totally willing to be monogamous with someone, but it doesn't mean that you are saying, I'm going to be with you 6 months from now, right? Like, a lot of us have a preference for monogamy because it allows us to deepen, it allows us to feel safe, right? And guys as well as women want to be safe in relationship. But yeah, I would encourage you just to honor that difference. And you'll know when you have a commitment, because normally it will be somewhat on an explicit conversation, and you need to get clear what that commitment is and what your agreements are to one another. I'm also not a fan of, I've noticed a little bit in some of the communities I'm involved in, where people get very into the agreements conversation. Like, we agree this, and we agree that, you can do this with other people and not this and not that. And sometimes it gets sort of up here at the level of how many cool agreements can we make with each other, versus just at a simplicity of a heart level. Like, do I want to put you first, right? above other people? And do I want to really commit to something with you? And if there is, yes, there might be conversations around the edge of what that looks like, but there's sort of this, don't mistake the, don't mistake the wood for the trees. It's like you need to get the core thing there, and then you can also talk about what's around the edges of that. Is there ever a chance for a satisfying relationship with a dismissive avoidant if you're a secure attachment style? Yeah, I think so. Here's what I'd want to know. One, are they willing to notice that they might be dismissive avoidant? Can you have attachment as part of your conversation and a shared reality? Can you do the attachment quiz together or something where you start to build a shared reality? Two, I think you probably want to get some support. Can you go to a coach or a therapist or someone that can hold you so that there's more information that's coming into the relationship? Because often these things are really hard to see, and it can be very useful to have an objective third person. Also, it's going to have to probably, it will be useful at least if you could be in touch with the dismissive avoidant part in yourself. Maybe you have that. Maybe you haven't discovered that. Maybe you don't have that. But most of us eventually might find that we have these parts all within us, and we've never really expressed it. So it's easier if you can start to understand your own avoidant, or your own, let's just say the upside, the high side of an avoidant is that they're self-reliant, and there's something good about that. So can you find that in yourself? Can you find the place of your own self-reliance? Because it just makes the empathy with their worldview easier. The danger is, for most of us, is that we polarize across our attachment styles. So the more that person shows up avoidant, the more they trigger perhaps my anxious. And it gets even harder for my anxious to understand, why would anyone be behaving in that way, right? So it can be really a useful chance for you to look at some things in yourself. And, from experience, it can sometimes be really hard. So, be gentle with your heart. Rebella, hey from the Philippines. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. I love that there's a good contingent of people that tune in from the Philippines. Love this live chat. Dawn, thank you. Thanks for being here. Now I feel badly for not being available for feedback. Oh, I don't want you to feel bad about that. I'm basically just trying to say that there's a way that I think you can be truthful with guys and not worry too much about, quote, hurting their feelings if you are in your heart. I know you, Nicole, and I know that you're sensitive. I don't have any concerns that you are likely to be kind of difficult and not aware of that in your conversations with a guy. And also, hey, if you and I have dated and we've gone on 4 dates, 5 dates, there's no real rule book of dating in the sense we don't necessarily need to have a debrief. At some level, again, there's a sort of simplicity, which is, do you want to see me for another date or not? And if it's not, for some people, it's actually harder if I say, well, look, and here are the 5 reasons why I don't want to see you. I don't think you're in your heart. I don't think you're emotionally mature. A lot of people don't actually want that because the initial kind of rejection of it is enough. So I think that's different. If we've been boyfriend and girlfriend for a year, yeah, I think we need a different kind of debrief, and we probably need to support the uncoupling of the attachment if we had that. But if you've only been on a number of dates, I don't necessarily think you need to get too complex with the debrief, unless someone really wants it, unless you want it and it feels really true to you. I think sometimes in the past, I would compound the hurt I'd put on people because I'd always want to explain to them, you're great in these ways, but there's this one thing, and that's the thing that I don't feel the connection. I don't know. You tell me. That sometimes I think can be a bit hard for people to get with. Okay, I'm just scrolling down here. Is it possible to have someone you only just tell you they're in love with you? Is love at first sight? Seems in a relationship. I told him I like to have all his energy. It's absolutely possible for someone to be in a relationship and fall in love with another person. Absolutely. What I don't encourage is that you pursue that relationship. And if you really think there's something to pursue, I encourage you to have the kind of no contact conversation that says, hey, I like you, but you're in a relationship, or I like you and you're married. If you really want to pursue something with me, clean up house and then call me. But until then, I don't want to be engaging in this, unless you really, are open to the fact that they may never leave, and, you're going to be a third wheel, but it's a lot of complexity, and it probably won't arrive with what you really want, which is probably to be with someone. So yeah, absolutely, you can have all someone's energy. It also, what it encourages is for guys to really lay it down. Thank you for someone who just sent money through the super chat. That's awesome. I've never seen that. Thank you. I appreciate it. It encourages a guy to be a guy, right? At the end of the day, a guy doesn't really grow by not being in the truth, right? So if a guy is married but is pursuing an affair on the side, that's never typically a guy at his best, right? And it might be that he's, just genuinely difficult circumstances. He's fallen in love with 2 people, but he's also got a commitment here. And sometimes you have to just force the decision, right? Because a lot of people are in this thing, well, I'll leave her, I'll do this. Actions speak louder than words. And also, even if you left your wife or girlfriend, whatever it is, today, you're going to need some time, buddy. I don't just want to jump into something with you. I'm going to let you heal, do some of your work. Then you can maybe give me a call. And that might be hard for you, but it probably gets you closer to what you really want. What about turning friendship into romance? So that can be possible. I think if that happens, you want to have an explicit conversation about that is kind of what's happening. And there is a danger if right from the start you want something romantic, but you're sort of in the friend zone, either because you've put yourself there or because they've put you there, that can be a little tricky to do that upgrade. If you're in the friend zone because, let's say, they actually have a relationship and maybe that relationship's unwinding, that might be different. But the foundational energy of a relationship, I think, is important. It's not that that foundational energy can never shift, but there is something about how is this thing kind of constellated. So I'm curious what's happened in that journey. Sometimes people know they have a romantic interest, but they want to be friends first to kind of really feel it out. I think that's fine. But sometimes you're friends and it sort of surprises you. Like, God, actually, if I think about it, Gary is the guy that I always call when I'm sad or when I need help, and he's always shown up. And suddenly it just sort of dawns on you like, oh, maybe Gary could be my guy. I think that's okay as well. So I'd be curious if you've got any detail of your situation. I'm happy to take that one further. Older spiritual men seekers tend to want your beliefs to match theirs. Is that really possible? What about meshing and growing together? That's a great question. We talk about B's and V's, right? Beliefs and values. And there's a complexity here. The short answer for me is I think it's better generally when your gross worldviews match. Right. So one way of talking about that is, are you in a more traditional or modern or postmodern or integral frame on reality? So there's lots of theories about how individuals and cultures move through stages of development or stages of worldview. If those things aren't aligned, it can be really typical, because typically it means one person is kind of mentoring the other or kind of wants them to be, say, more spiritual and they don't really get it, or one person is really traditional and religious and the other person is kind of atheist and humanist and it doesn't quite match. So there's lots I could kind of say about that. I'm also a fan that you don't have every single belief and value in common, right? But I see it a bit more like this. This is kind of my simplistic Venn diagram. You want to have enough values in common, because otherwise you're going to be rubbing up against each other a lot. But you don't want every value in common, possibly, because I also think that's where some of the growth. I think we grow by learning to value things that historically we haven't valued, right? Let's say one partner has a lot of value on money and security and the partner doesn't. Now that's going to create some problems, probably. But if there's enough commonality, it can also be where you grow. And one partner learns like, yeah, maybe there's more to life than money. And the other partner learns, this money thing is really important, right? So there's ways that these things can allow us to actually become more whole as human beings, but we need enough of an overlap, and it's probably more of an art than a science. And yeah, absolutely, you can grow together. I don't know whether you want to enmesh. That might be a different question. How do you begin to trust someone again after they broke your trust and questioning every gesture, every word? Who knows? Yeah, damn, that can just be really hard. Here's what I'd want to know. I'd want to know that they really understood the transgression and they really understood the impact of the transgression on you, and that they really got that. And you felt that side of things, like the historic side of things, that there's enough of an apology or a groveling or whatever it is, apology languages that would work for you. And then I think you need to have a conversation about, well, how are we going to make this not happen in the future, right? Because there's a way that you can just put it over there that they're untrustworthy. Sometimes that is exactly what's happening. There's also these sort of dynamics between people, right? Micro ways that we've lost each other's trust because I've kept interpreting a thing that you do, and I'm interpreting in a way that has me trust you less. They can be some of the really nitty gritty but good conversations where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that every time, I don't lock the front door, you trust me less. That's really good to know. I didn't realize that every time I'm hanging out with you and you take a call from someone else, I trust you less. Right? So we start to get a little more skillful, and this can be really hard, and sometimes it can be triggery. So I'm not saying this is easy, but it can be worthwhile to really reveal our worlds to one another of what actually builds trust. What in your world builds trust? Because it's so easy for me to subjectify you. I know what has me feel safe. That might not be what has you feel safe. A lot of what has me feel safe is how I was raised. Right? So for me, if we're even a trivial example, if we're parking a car, I feel safe if someone's taken a quick look around the area and made an assessment that it's a safe place to park a car. Some people, that's just not going to be on their radar at all. So in that situation, I'm then going to carry that because I'm going to be doing most of the noticing, right? For some people to feel safe, they need to know that if they tell you something that's sacred to them, that it stays sacred, right? And in your world, that might not be true. It might be that, if something gets said, but actually in the midst of an argument, it's all kind of game on, then you might say whatever you want to say. So there's lots of ways that we can build this with each other over time. And if it's a big transgression, I think you need to understand that you're going to have a regular check-in and that you need to go slow, right? And you also need to understand, why are you going back into it? Like, do you really have a belief, or knowing would be better, that this person isn't going to transgress again in this kind of way? Or is there something else that's sort of substantively shifted? And how do you know what's real? Is that you don't, doubt and curiosity, right? I talked about that early on this live stream. Doubt is also is a strategy to keep you safe. So a lot of us doubt, and men transgressing with us is a way of kicking up our doubt. So that can be really hard. But the way that you don't doubt all the time is actually to get in touch with your own intuition. So it's really to practice bringing your awareness down into your body and noticing what's going on in your body. And if you get any kind of intuition, because the head is the quickest thing that's going to have you spin out all the time and basically be in fear. Do you agree with dating multiple men at the same time? I think that's fine. I would say with a view to what? Right? I think it's good to have, I know why I'm dating. I'm dating because I want a partnership. And actually, I might be dating multiple people until I meet someone that I want to really lock something down with. I think that's totally cool. And I think you can also be transparent, and you can, if it comes up, you can say, yeah, I'm actually going on other dates. And if a guy is interested enough in that he wants to lock something down with you, I think he'll have that conversation with you. What you probably don't want to do is have multiple love attachments, right? That's different. If you're actually really super connected to a number of men at the same time, I think that can be difficult and can be harder to really invest in the right thing. Is it a good sign when he and I effortlessly on the same page, all the future plans? I mean, that's cool. I mean, it's cool to be on the same page. I'm a fan of that. I also believe, do I believe this? Do I know this? All right. There's something that I believe, that a real relationship does involve conflict. So that's something that just comes up for me. If everything is too easy and harmonious, it probably means at least one of the people or both of you aren't really showing up with your boundaries and your edges and your priorities and the places that you may want to assert yourself a little bit more. So it can be good to notice. I have a high value on harmony. I've been I was married previously in my 20s in a really harmonious relationship until it wasn't. And there was not much truth that was getting metabolized alongside the harmony. So there's also something about, let's have a good balance between harmony and truth. And if things are always sort of easy, maybe we actually need to notice if there's things that we aren't in touch with our own authentic desires and goals, but wanting the same thing for the future, whether that's settling down or living together or not living together, or family or not family, or shared incomes, shared resources or not. I think being on the same page is obviously a good thing with that. Just joining now. Hey, welcome, Wendy Ann. Exclusive by my initiative. Realized after the fact that he maybe isn't really available yet. When I try to attract, it seems to be here as often as he can be. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, there's also the ambivalent dance that can happen, right? Where you go close and he goes far. You back away. He gets interested. Guys often like the chase, and I'm not even going to make that wrong about. And it's not just men that like the chase, but maybe preponderantly. Sometimes that's just what is. It's not like he's trying to be a douchebag. It's just sort of like, when something's super available, sometimes the guy isn't into it. But I think when he really, there's a difference. And I can even notice myself in this in the past, where when I had sporadic interest in someone, normally it was because I wanted some connection, right? Or maybe I just wanted something casual. And that's different. Whenever I've been significantly interested in someone, there's just a different consistency. So I think pay attention to that. If a guy is ongoingly hot and cold, I don't think he's your guy. A gross orienting generalization. How do I shield myself at work? I'm super jumpy when he shows up. When a guy is a client, I no longer work directly with him. I think what you're saying is the guy that you're sort of seeing is a client. Yeah, that can be tricky. I remember back in the day having to navigate some workplace dynamics. I think what you try and do is just have an authentic conversation and understanding amongst you that, maybe we don't really connect at work, and at work we're just kind of oblivious to one another. I don't know that there's much more you can do. At a certain point, you might develop a relationship with someone where you say, you know what, the relationship is actually now more important than the workplace dynamic. So I might be willing to, come off a project or change team or even leave a company in service of the relationship going somewhere, if that's what it really needs. But also, if it's really serious, And people get that. Sometimes they're more flexible, right? It's different if you're kind of like, yeah, this is like my hot boyfriend that I have fun with, but we're not really going anywhere, versus, yeah, this is someone I'm trying to build a life with. So now things may need to reconciliate in my life. Is it good to set boundaries when someone tells you that they're in love with you? I've only seen them 3 times. Yeah, I think probably. If I'm in love with you and I've only seen you 3 times, I might be lacking sobriety, right? I might not be trying to, manipulate you. It just might be, yeah, boom, I'm infatuated with you. That's really easy to do, particularly for those of us that haven't done much work. We might not notice that we're even infatuated. So I would enjoy it. Just take it as like, oh, there's love in his heart right now. It doesn't mean anything about the future and where it's going. And if ongoingly you're the one that has to hold all the boundaries, that may also be a bit of a, maybe this isn't what I'm actually looking for, right? Because most women want a guy that can also hold at least his fair share of the boundaries. He works during the week out of town. He's only been on the weekends, but he's talking about retiring just over a year from now. Yeah, so that guy sounds like he's not really probably available for partnership. So, it might be that you say, cool, maybe call me in a year, and in the meantime, perhaps you go and pursue what you want. He says friends with benefits. I think friends with benefits is an unlikely candidate for an upgrade to partnership. So if a guy says off the bat, I want friends with benefits, and you don't want that, I would be really wary of it. Bianca, I'm really thankful for the advice. I'm going to dive deep into the subject. Awesome. Thanks. Yep. Still searching for a serious relationship. Still single. Ruby watching for the Philippines. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Should things just fall into place easily? Essentially, is a good rule of thumb to just distance yourself from the relationship if things are too confusing. Yes. I would say it is a good rule of thumb if it's too confusing. Sometimes there are logistical things that you have to work out, right? Like maybe you meet someone who's a really good candidate for being a partner for you, but they live in another country, or they live on the other side of the country, or they're in a work cycle or something. So there definitely can be, we have to work hard to figure out the long distance or something like that. But in terms of if the energy is too confusing, I would encourage you not to pursue it if it's too confusing. You can be open to a future season. But in this season, to be like, yeah, this is too hot and cold. It's not actually what I want. And sometimes you can even say to someone, look, I really love you. I freaking care about you. You're in my heart. And I want to take a stand for us. I actually did this with my now wife. It was like, I really care about this. And I don't want to be half-hearted about it. So you don't need to be with me. I'm clear I want to see if there's something with you. And I'm going to take a stand for that. And that also can be really powerful to have someone else take that stand, right? Like I really want to see what's here, and I don't want to play games with it. And that might be you or the other person that takes that stand. So I'm a fan of really prioritizing the thing that you most want. And if that's partnership, hold that sacred, because that is a sacred thing. That desire to want that partnership with someone that's really freaking awesome. And it's often hard as well. So like, don't make it that you've got to turn something confusing into something that's a bit more pure. Incredible video, just wide range with no prep, impressed and grateful. Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. I've done a lot in this realm. I've done a lot in the School of Hard Knocks. So I like it when my own personal struggle and my own being at the bottom of the hole is helpful to other people. That's really gratifying to me. I believe a good relationship is one where you enter and drop all expectations. Yes, I think dropping all expectations is really awesome. Jack Rabbit, thank you for the super chat pay. That's awesome. I appreciate it. It's been 2 months, exclusive, see what happens. Yeah, I mean, so I might just distinguish, if I like you, I'm probably going to miss you, right? That might be a different thing. Like I miss you is different from I want to be in relationship, I want a partnership with you. And so I think it's just about really aligning what you really want with whether someone else wants it. And sometimes you have to wake someone up and say, look, I'm pretty cool. I got a lot going for me. I spend time on the weekend investing in my relationship education. I'm probably conscious in certain ways. I've done some work. I'm beautiful, or I'm hearty, or I'm caring, or whatever the things that are true for you. You bring a lot to relationship. And actually, sometimes a guy has to realize, oh, I don't get to half-ass with you, right? Maybe that was a bit of a British American how I said that. I don't get to half-ass or half-ass. I'm going to go British. I don't get to half-ass with you. I don't get to play around with you. That's cool. I might not want to be your person. I might get out of the way because there's another guy that's going to play full time with you, but I don't get to play part time with you. And that's a really cool thing for a guy to realize, like, yeah, this person's awesome. Why would I want to, if I really love you as a guy and I'm not available, why would I want to screw your own partnership potential up by sucking up that oxygen when there's someone else that might actually want to be with you? Now that takes a little bit of a evolution as a guy, right? Because if you're into someone, even if you're not that available, you often don't want to see them with someone else. But come on. Like, real love is, if you're capable of being in a partnership, I love you and I want you to be in a partnership. It's not, I love you half of the time and the other half of the time I can't be with you, right? So there's also like realizing this serves the guy as well when you get clear with him. How does one identify the my person? What are some common things to look for? Okay, I think, how much are you comfortable being yourself with them? So how much is there like a natural authenticity that happens between you, where it's not games, it's not pretense, it's not show and performance? How available are both of you for partnership, right? If we just take either of you out, are you already available for partnership? Two people that are, I think that's good. How much can you be with the present versus the future or the past, right? I have been in a situation where I was just really waiting to get back to the past, by which I meant when we fell in love, it felt really good. But I was always trying to get back that feeling. And that's not a great place to be in a relationship. It doesn't tend to happen. Or are you fantasizing about the future? We could be this, we could do this, he could say this. But really the present, you're kind of avoiding the present, right? So there's a sort of quiet simplicity, I think, that underpins a lot of the soulmate relationships, where it's sort of like, yeah, this is my person. Do you feel this person is a good adversary for you, right? Where it's not like you're an easy pushover. It's not like you can avoid yourself in relationship with them, right? Because most of us have defenses, right? I tend to withdraw. If I'm in a relationship where I just get to withdraw, I'm not going to grow. But I want to be with someone who's attuned enough to notice, hey, you withdrew, right? So I have those kinds of things. It's like, oh, do we have the stability to keep coming back together when we knock heads or when we have conflict? Can we actually figure it out, sit down and try? You don't have to work it all out tonight, but is there a mutual willingness to be like, I want to show up for this and I want to show up for you. So I think it's a mixture of this sort of quiet knowing. It's not like a lot of head talk, quiet knowing that this, I just sense this might be my person, that you've met your match, right? And I don't just mean that like, are we equal in every way of ambition, blah, blah, blah. Just, yeah, I can't really pull the wool over this person's eyes, right? They want to get to know me. They want to love me deeply. They want to be with me. And being with me means you've got to be with things that are dark, because all of us have light and dark. And that it's not a fantasy. It's not, oh, we're going to be this kind of couple, that kind of couple. It's sort of like, yeah, there's an isness to it. There's a realness to it. No contact is no contact. Yeah, I'm beginning to feel like there's just too much attachment trauma. I've tried to heal it. I'm not sure if there are too many issues I haven't met. I imagine that nearly all attachment trauma, given the right support, is healable, right? It might take some time, but if you're aware that that's going on and you're willing to get support, I think that the willingness to do the work often trumps how much trauma have we had, right? I could have less trauma than you, but if I'm like, oh, therapy, yeah, that's not for me, or I'm not going to show up for that, I think that's a harder place to be. So often attachment trauma obviously heals in the right attachment relationship. So it can also mean that you can introduce attachment when you're really getting to know someone. Part of knowing you is that, yeah, maybe you've had attachment trauma and I need to know that about you. And I want to make a decision as a guy. Do I want to do that work with you? Do I want to partner you? Like, if I really want to be with you, it means I want to partner with you in that work. And I, as a conscious guy, I get that. Narisha, thanks. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate that I get the opportunity to share like this. This is a lovely way for me to spend an hour. I'm sure enough guy to help me through the difficult emotions and creative. Thanks for your insight. Yeah, absolutely. Like, let's take a stand for the maturity that we want and are capable of growing into in relationship. What's going on here? I'm flicking, going to sleep. Yeah, 2 a.m. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here. I'm out there active, meet people, enjoying life. Sure would like to find partner, haven't yet. Should I try something different? Yeah, I'm always a fan of trying something different if it hasn't been working for you, right? Just as a sort of simplistic generalization, if the things you've been trying haven't worked, let's try something different. Things you might not have tried is going in coffee shops and being smiley to guys that you're attracted to, right? And making it very obvious that it's kind of okay to say hello, maybe even being the first person to say hello if you haven't. That might just increase the amount of that kind of energy, the sort of romantic connection energy that you're in contact with. You may also try some new hobbies. You may try online if you haven't been trying online, but do it with a strategy. You may also get your friends to help you. I'm a sort of fan of this, particularly if you're someone that doesn't ask for much help, to be like, hey, I kind of want to meet a guy, and I'm wondering if you might be willing to just think of someone that you could set me up for a blind date. And no promises needed. Doesn't need to be a great blind date. It could be terrible, but I just want to see if there's anyone that you think I might want to connect with. So there's some things you might try. Let me know if there's other questions you have about that. Met him at work. He said it was only companionship. Wondering what this means. So companionship, in the way that I use it, means I want to be your friend, and we may have something that's a bit more than friends, right? Maybe sexual, may not be. Maybe that we kind of, a bit kind of snuggly, cuddly. May just be that you're a special friend. But I'm distinguishing that from I want to be a day-to-day partner to you, which normally as a guy, at least one way of thinking of that is that I kind of have the energy and the stability and availability in my own life to show up for you, to maybe take care for you. Like if you're going to call me and say, hey, I've got a hospital appointment, I might be willing to show up for that, or if you're like, yeah, I really want some company this weekend, that I might be the kind of person that's going to show up for it. So I think it's normally about, do I have a commitment to you? When you're my companion, we probably don't have any commitments. If I don't contact you for a week, that's fine. If you're my partner and I don't contact you for a week, we got a problem. Would you date someone who owes $80,000 student loans? I wouldn't have a hard and fast rule about that. I would want to be in the conversation with them and see what their relationship to that is, whether they're willing to work at it, what the sort of energy and the situation is that surrounds that. I happen to believe, I'm probably a bit of a romantic at heart, right? That if someone is really your soulmate, there may be all sorts of things that are like difficult about them, or are disadvantageous in some ways. I do know that money can be a source of conflict in couples. So I think it's more about, can we get on the same page and can we have a realistic conversation? Sometimes when people are in debt or have a habit of being in debt, they may not be the most realistic about it. They're always like, oh, I'm about to get out of it, or they've just turned a blind eye, right? They're just kind of avoiding it, and it's just like a problem sitting there. I would want to know that, look, with my help, would you be willing to face this and create some kind of plan or get the right kind of support? That was probably what would be important to me. Because even doing that, let's just take the debt. The debt is a proxy for, well, how are you and I going to deal with problems that inevitably come up when we're in a relationship? Right? How are we going to deal with that? Can we look each other in the eye? Can we have a heart-to-heart conversation? Can we care for one another? Can we be realistic as well as being in our hearts? Right? And sometimes people tend to err on one side. They're either sort of super realist or they're kind of like a bit spacey when it comes to realities of life. And between you need, I think, ideally to have a bit of both of them. And I remember, never forget this. One of my first mentors, a teacher I had at high school, who was he was a soccer coach, and he was also our tutor. So it just basically I met with this guy, a group of us, 16 of us, pretty much every day for about 7 years. And I remember him saying one time, look, bottom line, he'd been a long time married. He's like, you got to be able to sit down, talk things through, and clear with one another. And at the time, I didn't really have too much context for that. I generally had relationships, and it was like, oh, we hadn't hit sort of snags. But the reality is, when you really live with someone and you start to share responsibilities and you share resources and there's control that comes up, most of us, we need an ability to sit down and say, hey, we've got a problem. How are we going to deal with it? Is he emotionally unavailable if he keeps this girl around because she's in love with him and keeps his ego big? Yeah, I'm quite a bit of a hardliner on that stuff. You find your own truth. My hard line on that is that I, as a guy, want to make you feel safe, right? And so part of you feeling safe is that actually I don't keep hanging around with women that are in love with me or women that really want to sleep with me. I think it's actually an area of growth for a lot of dudes, is to actually just say, look, yeah, I kind of get it. This person is more than a friend. If I were available to them, they would want something more with me. So I need to have an appropriate boundary. And one of those appropriate boundaries might be, if I'm going to hang out with them, that you get a right to come along, right? That you get a right to participate. The other thing is, you might get a right to turn the dial up and down, which means if you have a problem with me hanging out with this person, then that's a problem to me. And I want to actually give you the right to say, yeah, could you just kind of go easy on that and not see them for a month? Right? Or if you're going to see them, could you just see them for an hour, and could you do it, before 6 p.m.? Or could you make sure, one of my things, I'm not too keen to have partners see anyone that's an ex at a sort of time that looks like a date, right? Like a Friday night or a Saturday night. So, find what works for you. But if I'm not willing to receive your influence, that's a big deal. John Gottman, foremost relationship researcher, pretty much, giving and receiving influence is one of the keys to longevity in relationships. So if I can't receive your influence at this stage, what's going to happen when the big things are down, So it's also a good filter, right, for a guy that actually wants to really receive you. Thank you so much for insight. Bring me perspective. The only thing that helps. You're really good at this. Amazing work. Thank you. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that, Jesse. The guy working out of town is the guy that I want exclusive with and try to retract. Think he wants to stay exclusive, wants to finish making his money into retirement. He took a week off. Yeah, I mean, so sometimes guys are in different stages, right? If a guy is really focused on, I want to retire, and then I might think of partnering with someone, that's probably what he's available for, which is, I'm not available for partnership now. And you get a choice. You could hang around, right? Maybe be his companion, maybe even his lover for a year, or till he retires, and then see if something's possible. I would just do it in full sobriety that you may or may not be the person he wants to partner with, right? Sometimes if we go for this sort of lower hanging fruit of companion, it doesn't always upgrade to partner. So hard for me to say. I've definitely seen women be hurt where they're like, wow, I'm the one that showed up. I'm the one that would do this, help him, da, 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 da. And then boom, 6 months later, he goes marry someone else because we didn't really have that contract of partnership. So you may also want to say, if that's what you really want with the guy, like, I'm actually gonna downshift now in service of that option in the future. Does long distance relationship work? I mean, here's the bottom line on that for me. I'm a fan of long distance relationships becoming short distance relationships. So at the appropriate time, whatever that is for you, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, you got to be in that real conversation about, hey, I actually want something that's more day to day. And what are we going to do about that? And the kind of willingness to show up for the relationship is also a really important factor in the relationship working, right? So if I'm not willing to move for you, what makes you think I'm really going to be willing to jump when I need to jump at really critical times in our relationship? So it can also be a good filter. And in the meantime, when we're long distance, how often are we connecting, right? And real time connecting. I think that's an important thing. And I'm a big advocate for relationships, so I might be a bit on one end of the spectrum. But I was willing to go around the world to find my woman. So I mean, it's hard to say what works in any particular situation, but I don't think you can shy away from, in order for this to be investable, there has to be some give from you to work out how can you have a life together. Even if it's, I come to you for 1 week, then we don't see each other. You come to me for 1 week, or we do all weekends, but like some level of like, we're really investing in this, because otherwise you can, what you might work out within a few months with someone, it takes you 3 years to work out that is actually not that available, right? So you don't want to get caught in that trap. I love and appreciate all the knowledge you share with so much authenticity. Thank you, Harsha. What does it mean when a man tells you that you're the one but never met? Probably means he's in a fantasy, I would think. I don't know how you can really tell that someone's the one if you haven't been in person with them. Or if you really thought they were the one, why would you not be in person with them, right? If I really thought you were the one, even if you're like halfway around the world, why at some level am I not getting on a plane to go and say, hey, you're the one? So I think actions speak way louder than words in that sort of situation. Is it normal in a fiance? You're going to have to help me with that, because I've lost the thread of what that is. I was dating this guy, but we had a mediated relationship. Wires got crossed. We ended up arguing all the time. He called it off, but I still love him. Should I just leave it alone? Oh, yeah, good question. It can be really hard when you argue a lot, because you hurt each other. There is probably a necessary level of argument, I think, that happens, conflict between most couples that go the distance. So the distinction I would make is when a relationship ends in an argument, right? Like basically I'm defended and we're attacking each other, or you're defended, we're both defended. That is the truth at the point of defense, right? Which isn't always the real truth. So what I'm a fan of, even if it's difficult, is at some point, even if you have to have several bites at this cherry, is that you actually sit down and have a real conversation from your hearts. That's really, because that's the truth, right? Like when we really get in our hearts together and we tell the truth, we can really see what is here. Sometimes it takes time. You might not have an immediate knowing, but if it's like, yeah, I'm angry and defended and I push you away and the relationship ends, sometimes that is difficult to get closure, because it's like it didn't end on the true note. So I would be a fan of, if you still love him, you can let him know that, and you can also say, let's talk about it. Let's actually have a conversation, and maybe go into that with some unknowingness. You don't really know where it's going to go, but you just know what's maybe true for you. Arguing isn't all bad. It's like there are better ways to argue. That's really, I think, what most of us are trying to learn is, yeah, we have conflict. Can we do it better? Can we do it in a way that we don't always hugely disrepair? And, personally, I've got a ton to learn about this. Sometimes if I get really angry, I get really angry, and I'm not pretty. So, but is there enough underlying stability that you keep coming back together? That I think is an important part of long-term relationships. Is, yeah, it's not high school love. It doesn't have to always feel good. Sometimes it's not going to feel good. But is there an ability that we kind of see that we got to work this? Because if you're arguing all the time, you've got work to do, and ideally you want to have a runway to do that work, not just like we have to figure it out this weekend. I hope that helps. I found the trap in situation when you long-term invest emotionally but not receiving much back. There was some pulling from the other side and some declaration, I love you, but this seemed to be like promising declaration of how to overcome the grief of misplaced emotional investment. Okay, I mean, I think that's a question about grief more generally in some ways. All right, the grief can be compounded if you feel like you invested a lot. I did do a video on this, which is something like #1 cure for a broken heart. So you might want to check that out. The bottom line, I think, is you've got to feel things. And even if that's really tough and painful, I encourage you to, as authentically as possible, feel the loss and to distinguish between feeling and the story, right? So the feeling is, right, at a sensation level, like, wow, my heart is bursting right now, or my heart is feels shattered, or it's lightning bolting through it, or I can't even feel anything. It's so dried up. Like, that's the sensation level. Then there's the emotion. Like, what am I feeling? I'm feeling loss. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling anger, probably. And to really feel those things, but to try not to go too much into story. Story is, I'm never going to be in a relationship again. Story is, no one's ever going to love me, right? These are things that aren't about the present moment. Yes, they're going to come up. Yes, your brain, your inner critic is probably going to run riots with you, but as best you can, you feel things directly without amplifying it up with stories, because the stories is what keeps the feeling locked in place for a long time. If you can feel things without too much story, generally, kind of like the weather, it changes. Now, it may be a monsoon for a week or a month. You might have to deal with a lot to get there, but at some point, the monsoon season tends to end. That's what we're looking for, like an authentic emotional expression. We allow things to move through us. Couple that with getting good support, right, from friends, family, therapists, whatever you need. And couple that with also having time where you're not doing that, right? So we don't necessarily want every moment of every day you're just gushing. What we might want to say is, look, I'll put aside a couple of hours and I'll be with myself, and I'll have my tissues and my journal and kind of comfort myself and feel things. And then at a certain point, I might have felt enough for today, and I'm actually going to go into action. I'm going to go for a run, get to the gym, do something that kind of allows you to get some positive endorphins moving around your body, or go hang out with a friend that you can connect with. So don't kind of make your life a misery, but titrate it, like feel it over a period of time. You mentioned online dating. If you have a strategy around this, curious to what this strategy entails. The first thing I want to say is I think online dating can be difficult, and it can be disproportionate, like the time in and what you get out. Here are some pointers. Number one is don't develop pen pal relationships, right? So don't text with a guy, email with a guy, message with a guy for a long time without meeting. If you want to meet him and he's not suggesting that, just make it clear, like hey, I'd love to get together in person. And if he's not really pursuing that, probably not your guy, probably not really interested in a relationship with you. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is to go on online dating apps when you're feeling centered and self-loving, right? I think it's easy to do it when we feel kind of like lonely and it's 11 o'clock at night. And I think what we bring to the interaction from that place is kind of different. I'm also a fan of balancing the visuals with the non-visuals, because a lot of us, we have an unconscious attraction strategy when someone has some matching at an archetypical level with people in our past. So we're like, boom, I'm really attracted to this person. The person that's like zips off the page is probably not your guy. Often it means your animal is really attracted. But generally, I think there's something, I think you're probably going to be attracted, but not necessarily at that like 12 out of 10, possibly. That there are other things to look for. And that's where you go to kind of like the text. And I think you're sort of, you're open, but you're clear, right? That's the balance in dating. I'm open. I don't know where this is going. I don't know who you are. I don't know what this could become, but I'm also closed to the extent that I really do know what I want. And I'm actually available for something. I'm not unwilling to say it, right? If a guy's ready for partnership, he doesn't get turned off when a woman says, I'm ready for partnership. When a guy is turned off by you being ready for partnership, that's a good filter, right? If you're really clear, yeah, my days of like, trying and having a boyfriend or something casual are kind of done. I want something more serious. And you don't have to like ram it down his throat, but just you're kind of integrated in yourself that you're clear what you want. And the other thing is, online dating, it's kind of like, it's marketing, right? So, marketing and sales, to use business metaphors. So marketing is only so good really at some level, in that at some point it results in some sales, right? So online dating is only so good as it sort of results in, let's say, a real-time in-person connection with someone that is meaningful or could go somewhere. So if you're doing a lot of time in online dating and it's not yielding results, that's where I'd be like, change it up, whether that's change your profile, whether that's do some things offline, whether that's, make more approaches or fewer approaches, or you've got to, just like if you are marketing a product, you've kind of got to find a way that works for you. And that it might be authentically the way that works for you is different than what would have worked for me, but you've got to kind of find that way rather than just persisting in something that isn't working. So I think there's a sort of spirit of, let me find the way that dating can really work for me. If you really struggle to get dates, I would really encourage you to kind of model or interview someone who's good at getting dates, because there may be things that they do that are easy for you to learn how to do, but you've just never had to learn it, or you haven't learned it. You had a comedy show. Awesome. I hope it was great. No contact for 3 months. Do you think it's over for us? who instigated the no contact? And was 3 months your agreed period? You know, there's no hard and fast with this. You could be no contact with someone for a long time. I've, in my history, I've been no contact with someone for a year, and then it ended up in deep and meaningful relationships. So I don't think there's hard and fast. It's just more about why are we doing that, and where are we both at in our realities and hearts. How do you feel about a man keeping women around distantly for him to have some type of gratification you're feeling in his life? I don't feel that excited about that. You know, of course, like, let me strip it down. We all have needs for connection, right? I have a sense that we all have a right to connection, but what I don't necessarily want is that we're mismatched, that I have just a need for a bit of connection when I want connection, and you actually want a relationship with me. That's a mismatch. So that's what I'm a fan of, authentic and crucial conversations where we kind of clarify, what are you available for? What am I available for? Can we play ball? And of course, all guys want connection. All guys, pretty much all guys want connection. All guys at some point feel lonely. All guys at some point feel a part missing in their life, and it's 11 o'clock and they want to start texting someone. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a booty call. It's just, I'm lonely and I want to connect with someone. There's nothing wrong with that. You just need to distinguish that from, is this someone that actually wants to be in an ongoing relationship? That's the distinction for most of us. I'm in a long-term relationship, long-distance relationship for 1.5 years. How would I know or do to get to know whether he wants a marriage or not? Okay, 1.5 years. What about asking him? You know, I'm a fan, again, of this sort of simple authenticity, not from a place of demand, not from a place of I need this to go a certain way, right? You might definitely have your desire for what you want him to say, but if you can, get curious about what is his reality. Bring us as much curiosity and objectivity as you can. And what you could also do is have it that you both get a chance to speak uninterrupted, right? We call this witnessed monologue. It's a kind of fancy phrase. Basically means like you get 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you talk, I listen. I don't comment. I don't interject. I don't make you right or wrong. I just nod and I listen. Don't even need to nod, just listen. And then you do the same for me. Now that can be a great way. It can be a bit weird if you're not used to doing it, but it's a great way for you get to explain your whole truth without having to calibrate it to how do I respond to it. So it can be a really good sort of truth-telling, heart-sharing kind of exercise. I think 1.5 years in my world, that's a totally long enough time to ask a guy, what are your intentions for me? Now, the guy may or may not know his intentions. If he knows his intentions, hopefully he can be man enough to declare them to you, right? Whether that's, yeah, my intention is I really want to be with you. I'm just not there yet, or I'm not sure, or actually a lot of guys know deep down if they're willing to be honest and they're not afraid of hurting you or that they're afraid of losing the connection, they kind of know sometimes if this is really someone that I consider in that, you know, marriageable partnership box or not. And it can be really useful to try and get access to that reality. Again, you don't get it by pushing him around and making him wrong. You also, a lot of guys don't necessarily like to be doorstepped into that conversation, right? So it can be useful to perhaps say, hey, at some point, I'd love to talk to you about this, or to even just name what's true for you and give him a period of time to respond. I remember even in my own situation of, you know, eventually proposing and being married as I am now, that conversation was still a little daunting to me, right? For a lot of guys, it's like, wow, that's like the ultimate freedom question. And most guys' highest value is freedom. And this is the like, wow, am I going to, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose that? Is this, am I sure? There's lots of things. A lot of guys, you know, we get up here, like we're human and heady about that. So what I think you don't want is to rush that conversation that gets you the answer that's not true. What you want is is he centered and authentic and telling me the truth? If he feels like he's got to respond to you in a certain way or on a certain timeline, sometimes that can distort things because now he feels you're being demanding. Now he's remembering his mother, whatever. And it's like, we're not so much in the truth. You ideally want a spaciousness around that conversation that maybe can unfold over a period of weeks, maybe even months, to really get to the truth of it. And you want to know that you're talking to him from a place where he's relaxed. You know, you're not talking to stressed 10 p.m. after, you know, the 4th day of the work week guy. You want to know that you're kind of with the guy that's somewhat in his center, somewhat relaxed, and then see what the truth is from there. Thanks. That's how I feel. Awesome. Christine, thank you. I respect your opinion, feel heard, and believe you get women. Blessings to you. Thank you. Doing my best. Doing my best. Thank you so much for the advice. You're welcome. Thank you for the insight. Stability and respect when communicating is essential. Yes, I agree. Christian, greetings from Romania. Thank you again. Marlene, you're welcome. Cami, thank you. I'll try to mention. Where are you from? Okay, guesses. Where am I from? I'm sure some of you know this. Rachel says, is this normal if a fiance never cheated, but if a female initiates sex, he said he will have sex and then tell me and expect me to be mature about that? Oh, let me just read that again. Is this normal if a fiance never cheated, so he's not cheated, but if a female initiates sex, he said he will have sex and then tell me and expect me to be sure about I'm not a fan of that. I think that's saying that if someone else initiates with me, I get to go and have sex with them. That's not a guy that I would feel comfortable relaxing into and opening up to, right? Which is ultimately, when you really pin it down, it's like you want a guy that you can trust, and you want a guy that you can lean into, and he won't live up to the expectations all the time, but substantively, that's kind of what you want. So even in my system, I feel now, God, if I was with someone and they're like, they want a hall pass that they can go cheat anytime as long as the other person initiates, that would not have me, even as a somewhat kind of secure guy most of the time, that would not have me feel safe and secure. I don't think that's the response. Here, let me just frame it differently. My sense is the mature masculine says, being in relationship has limitations, right? Being in relationship means we have a commitment, we have agreements, there's things that we don't develop intimacy with other people. And as a mature guy, I choose that. I don't see it that you, as a woman, are placing that upon me. I choose it because I get that there's something really great about committed monogamy. I get that in our container, we can have more truth, more intimacy, more beauty. We can support each other better. We can have each other's backs. And that's what I want. Where that gets difficult is when the guy in the maybe less mature masculine, I can associate this from my past, is like the relationship is the classic awful metaphor, right? For a wife, right? The ball and chain. That is an immature masculine view of what's going on, often based upon you are the one that's imposing all the limitations on me, rather than I willingly, freely, from my mature masculine, choose limitations in service of greater freedom, right? Because there is a reciprocal and polaric relationship between constraint and freedom. To be free is not to have no constraints. Right? To be free is to have the right constraints and to choose them and to be in integrity with them. Data, thank you so much for your advice. You're totally welcome. Thanks for being here. We've been going now, coming up for 1 hour and a half. So I appreciate it. I was going to stay as long as you guys had questions. So keep them coming if you want this to continue. USA, London. Yeah, that's a pretty good guess. So yes, I lived in the US for about 7 or 8 years, and I'm English born, British born, and I spent most of my 20s in London. I'm actually from, my hometown is called Norwich. It's in the east of England. It's a nice part of the world, a lot of history, and it's a pretty sort of slow pace of life. It's a nice place, and I welcome any opportunity I get to go back there. Okay, you really like you were abused. I'm not sure what that question is. You're going to have to restate that to me. Let me know if you've got any more questions or things you want feedback on, things you want advice about. We've been really much in this territory of, is he the one? And I've tried to sort of lay down the simplicity in the complexity. And I think the simplicity has to do with, is he already available for partnership? Can he have an availability conversation with you? Do his actions match his words? Is there a cadence to the relationship that tends towards consistency and a kind of stability? Can you form some kind of somewhat secure attachment bond, right? It doesn't have to be off the bat, but that you're both interested in working towards that. And is there a kind of quiet knowingness? I think this is something I know from my personal experience. I think it's true for a lot of people, is that sort of there's a way of finding a person where there's like, it's not like I have to rationalize and think my way there or imagine some future situation or create some splendid narrative around us. It's sort of like, yeah, I kind of have some knowing about this. It's like a quieter place. Question from Meredith. Any advice for dating and grief? My best friend, a former life partner, died very suddenly in March. Oh, I'm so sorry. God, that sounds terrible, hard. I'm still in healing mode. It's still so recent. No rush to date. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how. I think you've been here a while. I don't remember your surname, but I definitely saw Meredith earlier. I did just talk a little bit about grief, more in the context. The question was about kind of moving on from someone that you've got no contact with, I think. But I think generally the orientation I have to grief is the kind of, I'm gesturing here towards the door. It's the like, when anything knocks on the door emotionally, you tried your best to welcome it, right? So if anger's coming, you welcome it. If grief is coming, you welcome it. And you try to welcome it in the way in which you're welcome here. You can stay as long as you need to stay. I'm not going to try and amplify you. I'm not going to try and make myself feel more grief than is real. I'm just going to try and be with the measure of it that actually is happening. And I think it's also important to get good support. Most of us, like I've been coaching for a long time, most of us, I would say, can get better at making requests for support, and specifically requests for support in vectors of support that feel supportive to you, right? So AKA, what actually does feel supportive to you? Can you know that and articulate it? You might want a friend to come around and cook you a meal because when you're really emotional, it's just hard to do the practicalities of life. That might feel like support. Support might feel like, could you witness me for half an hour and just let me be in my process and let me emote and grieve? Grief could look like something where you want to just sit with someone in silence and you don't even want to process. You just want to be with someone because you actually feel you want to be connected while you're grieving. So learn how to make high quality requests for support. Hey, thanks, Nicole. I'm grateful for you and thank you for being here. So I think one way to get through grieving is to really not do it too solo, right? Even if you notice one night, like, wow, it's just really tough. Maybe you pick up the phone and you pick up the phone to someone. And so don't do it all alone. Most of us generally, we're deeply social animals, right? I'm a pretty hermetic guy, spend a lot of time on my own, and we all need each other, right? So it's like we need each other in grief. Find out who are your essence friends. By essence friends, I mean, who are the friends that can be with you wherever you are, really, who can be with you in your joys and be with you in your despairs. They don't need you to be kind of in one box, and that they get that you are going through something. Often grief is also an opportunity for some people to show up. It can be a good opportunity for people to show their love for you, I guess is another way of saying that. And then I'd also say, do it in doses. If you're finding like you're just kind of crying all day, every day, then maybe you need to mix it up. Maybe you need to get out, go to nature. For me, nature's my go-to. I mean, it's my place of restoration and soothing. I think that's true for a lot of us. Get your feet on this ground if you can. Take those shoes off, connect to the earth. For a lot of us, that's nourishing. Water, from a lot of us, water and emotions have some kind of connection, right? So baths, steam rooms, hot tubs, showers, rivers, creeks, anything that can just allow you to notice, there's a flow to life. And this is the season for grief. This season won't go on forever. So realizing that, everything has its natural course. That's what comes to mind for me. And don't be too hard on yourself. Don't need to have too many expectations, right? You might be grieving for days, weeks, months. Today, it's just sort of like grief can be an invitation to presence. I find when I feel a lot, I actually feel more present. I feel more alive. Even when it's difficult feelings, there's this kind of like, wow, I'm really heart-centered and present. So there's also something really beautiful about grieving. And you only have to deal with this moment, right? And that can sound like a sort of spiritual truism, but there's something about it. You don't really have to deal with tomorrow because tomorrow will take care of itself. So today is today, this moment. What do you need? Try and be present to yourself. So, okay, not quite understanding. It looks like a language I don't speak. Questions in English. Maybe French on a good day. Latin, also have questions in Latin, just joking. I did used to study Latin, but didn't get that well with it. You're welcome. I'm glad my views are insightful and relatable to you. Beautiful advice. Thank you for Wisdom Creating this community. Yeah, you're welcome. How often do you do this live chat? I'm from Singapore. Well, welcome from Singapore. I have been to Singapore only for about I've been twice. One time I didn't have basically connecting flights from Indonesia, so I didn't get to leave the airport. And then one time I left the airport for about 7 hours and found this really nice downtown place. I have a friend who's been working over from London, who's been working over in Singapore. Hey from Oregon. Hey, Misty. So I don't have a set rhythm. This is the first live stream that I've done like this. I put out a poll to the community, got about 200 responses. And one of the things that people said they'd like to see was more live streams. So this is me kind of spontaneously on a Saturday offering this. And happy to do it as long as there's response. I've been really pleased. There's like a lot of this we've had, we're now at 92 people here. We had over 100 people here. If there's response, I'll be here. My general orientation is that there's a genuine question, I'll try and give a genuine answer. And I love learning and teaching and being with people around questions that seem important. And I think love and relationships are really important. I think in some ways, love and relationships are the leading edge of consciousness, right? By which I mean, I think most of us are probably getting worked more in our love relationships than we are maybe in our work in certain kinds of ways. In terms of the real, like, how do I heal? How do I feel my wholeness? How do I love myself? These things come up more for us in relationship. So that's why I'm really enamored of relationship as a sort of working surface. And I also think we need to evolve politically. And I actually think in some ways, for a lot of us, right, it's like, well, how can we even do that? I feel so powerless in this kind of political system. I think relationship is the surface a lot of us can use to actually really grow and integrate things within ourselves, right? To integrate the truth in our heart, right? To be able to be clear and open in our intuition and thinking, as well as being in our heart and embodied in our bodies. Relationship is really the practice ground. So that's one of the reasons I'm really grateful that I didn't plan to be a relationship coach. I've always loved coaching. I've been in the human development space pretty much my whole career. When I was in my teens, I wanted to be a coach. And I remember telling people, and I remember them laughing at me. And I remember kind of having to deal with that and, still show up and follow what I wanted. And as it happens, it feels like relationship has kind of been the surface. Even when I used to coach people in a more kind of business way on self-management and productivity, it was always the relationship stuff that seemed to kind of underpin things or have juice, or where teams were dysfunctional. And then relationship became the thing. And I'm really interested in how do we get to be ourselves and be in relationship? Like, how do we get to live our path spiritually and inner work and be in relationship? I think that intersection is, certainly for me, there's a lot of juice in it. Enjoyed the live stream. Yeah, awesome, Marlene. I agree wholeheartedly. Thank you, Misty. Can I ask or invite a guy out if I'm interested in him and he knows that I do? Yeah, I've heard some people sort of apply like the 80-20 rule to this, right? So like sort of 80% of the time, let a guy initiate, 20% of the time you can. I don't think you need to be in a hard and fast rule. It's just saying that, yes, you are totally allowed to take initiative. Be authentic to yourself. If your authentic desire is to kind of say, hey, I'd like to take you on a date, you can also do the green lighting, which is, hey, I'd love if you would take me on a date. Would you be interested? And then you can leave him to kind of, fix the details. So there's a way that you can also initiate without having to be responsible for the full initiation. A lot of women like that. And some guys, they kind of need the green light to kind of get off their backside and notice that, there's something here. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes I think in terms of, is there a real connection? Sometimes intuitive women dial into that quicker than a guy. So it can be, if you're like, I think there's something here that can be useful. What you don't want to do is constellate into I'm the initiator and I'm the pursuer, right? So we don't want to kind of unconsciously adopt a role that then has you not in the orientation that you actually want in relationship. So why is he hot and cold, mostly cold? Is his life really that busy? Maybe too busy for me. So I don't know, but I would say we could spend a lot of time analyzing that, right? And I'm open to that. There's also the simplicity of, okay, so we don't need to know why he's hot and cold. He is hot and cold. What are you going to do about that? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is, I actually don't want a hot and cold relationship, right? I will feel safer. I will grow more if I've got a guy that is at least has a minimum effective dose of consistency and stability and showing upness, right? So sometimes these things that show up in relationship, that like they arrest us and we're like, God, I'm so confused. And it takes so much energy and horsepower and mental thinking. And we can take a step back and notice, okay, maybe I don't understand that, right? I don't understand nuclear physics, but I do know that nuclear bombs are dangerous, right? So you don't necessarily have to understand every little relational dynamic of why a guy's hot and cold, or is that his ambivalent attachment, or is that the way his mother loved him? Might be all of those things or none of them, but you can just notice what's the impact on you. The impact is he might not be your guy, right? Because you might want a guy that shows up with enough warm enough of the time that for you to feel like I want to invest. So there's a kind of simplicity. I'm not unsmart. I'm educated. I did really well academically, IQ, blah, blah, blah. I've had to learn a lot that actually sometimes if I shift that off and just kind of look at it and be like, what's the bottom line? What's the simplicity in this, if there is something? Not to make things, not to reduce complexity unhelpfully, right? But just to notice, like, if there's a dominant thrust here, it's like, he's not really available. And I can just hold a boundary that I want an available guy. I don't necessarily need to spend all my time wondering about him. Guys generally, at a certain stage, are really available for partnership. If that's the kind of a partnership-oriented guy, that's what you want to learn how to recognize, right? We could spend all our time recognizing something that's not actually the thing that we want. And we might also want, we need to say no to that, but we might also want to get really good at recognizing what does an available guy look like? How does he show up like? And if you need to go and interview, 5 guys who are married and who could tell you exactly what happened when they became ready and wanted to settle down, go do that. That would be a really good use of time to get more acquainted to what is that energy. Beautiful advice. Thank you. You're welcome. If I had a longer question, is there a way to send that to you but not on a live video to know if you could answer it or if I would need coaching? So you can add me on Instagram. I'm going to put this in here, and then you're welcome to send me a private message. I'm not enrolling coaching clients at the moment. I'm just about to go into some of my summer break, but I will be back in the fall, and I'm going to be opening up a group coaching program, and I will be taking on a few select premium coaching clients. So that's that kind of lay of the land. Thank you for your interest. If you also want to be first in line, you can go to, putting my website in here with my code. Press that too early. Can I edit it? Yes, I can. So jackbutler.com/apply. That's where you can apply for coaching. And if you apply that at the moment, you're going to be the first people I reach out to when I'm enrolling new coaching, both group and individual. Am I in London? No, I'm not. I spent most of my 20s in London. I am in Colorado. We are really glad you stuck with your dream to be a coach. Yeah, thanks. I mean, yeah, I remember how much the world's moved on a lot, right? Nowadays, I think if someone's like, hey, I want to be a coach, and particularly in the States, I think a lot of people are open to coaching, right? I'm saying fast forward the clock over 15 years ago in England, and there wasn't too much openness to the idea of, why would I need coaching? Who are you to coach me? I encountered a lot of that. And yeah, sometimes in service of your dream, you have to kind of follow it, right? And just, if you know something's true for you, just keep kind of plugging away at it. And there's so many things in my life now that are kind of obvious. Like, yeah, it's kind of obvious to me that I coach people. It's obvious that I teach, or it's obvious that I have a pretty flexible lifestyle and I'm not like a 9-to-5 in an office cubicle. But a lot of those things on the way to them were not obvious and were non-linear and were, one step forward and 2 steps back. So yeah, you don't really know what's under the iceberg, right? So when you see someone doing a certain thing, you sometimes don't know what the path is and what the struggle is. I learned that from running, because I was a pretty decent runner as a kid and a teen. And then for the first time in my life, I kind of got unfit, and I noticed, like, wow, running is so much harder when you're not fit versus than when you're the person who might win the race. Even though you run your heart out, it's like, wow, when you're fit, it's such a different thing. And I was like, yeah, you have no idea really, unless we share what our struggles are. It's just, yeah, part of the mystery in some ways. That was absolutely wonderful. Appreciate you sharing your life. Zari, you're so welcome. Learning how to be myself in a relationship, not lose myself, started dating again. It's been an interesting experience. Yeah, I think, Misty, a lot of us are learning how not to lose ourselves in relationship. Yeah, it's and don't be too hard on yourself there. I would encourage you to see it as like a course correction, right? It's not that you're trying to find this static center of myself and I'm in a relationship. It's probably going to do this, right? And you're like, oh, I lost myself. Let me do something for myself. Oh, I'm over giving. Let me put some time in the calendar for me. Oh, yeah, I'm over there with you. Let me go and get myself a massage. Do you know what I mean? There's that kind of, it's a polarity. So it's kind of like an ongoing, like, yeah, can we find what's true now? Can we bring in the thing that we need? Hi from Maryland. Hey, Elizabeth. Just want to say that your content has been incredibly empowering and impactful to me, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you. Hey, thanks. Doing my best. And it's really helpful to get feedback like that, because it lets me know I'm on the right path, providing some value. A lot of love. Didn't realize that. Here is a beautiful country. My uncle is from the UK. Yeah. I have a big love in my heart for both countries, and I tried my best to see them. I try my best to see the UK and England, because England's where I've lived. I don't really know Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland so well. And the US, I try and see them in their light and their darkness, right? And when I became a US citizen last year, a lot of people were like, whoa, why would you become a US citizen? I'm a dual citizen, so I have both. But I was like, America's a great country. I know a lot of you, don't like the president. I totally have my own critique of the president. And there's so many things that are great about America. And I see where there's things that are really great, how we do it in the UK, and the way that we take care of each other in different ways, and universal healthcare and all that. So yeah, I'm super grateful. I think the England gave me some really good roots that I like. And there was a time where it was kind of right for my life path to sort of spread some wings. And I'm grateful that the US has given me the ability to do this work full time. So I'm super grateful for that. You're a foot. Okay. RURO. You're gonna have to help me with that. I'm not sure I'm following the acronym. Nearly 2 a.m. in the UK. So good night to you. Yeah, totally. Appreciate any of you that tune in from England, UK, Europe. Awesome. I'm impressed. Thank you, and get some good rest. Seriously, thank you. You're welcome. I just dipped my toe into human design learning and project. Anyone else look up human design? I know a little bit about human design. I'm certainly not super well schooled in it. What I know about human design is that I want to know more about human design would be probably the truest thing to say. I've really majored in the Enneagram, and I wanted to kind of deepen in one system. Historically, I was a bit like wanted to know everything about everything, and I've really tried my best over the recent years to be like, you know what, let me go deeper in fewer things and actually get to kind of the gold of them. So I use the Enneagram a lot in my coaching work. In human design, for those of you into it, I'm a 6/2 manifesting generator. Autumn Pixie, I'm so glad I caught this. Love your eloquence. I express information. Keep with inspiration work. Thank you. Thank you so much. Doing my best with that. How did you get dual citizenship? I looked into dual citizenship UK. You have to be an engineer investor of some sort. Well done to you. I've been a permanent resident. Once you've been a permanent resident for 5 years, you are eligible for citizenship in most instances. And there are some countries you can do dual and some countries you can't. And it happens that the US, UK, you can. I know that Switzerland doesn't do it anymore. So there's a lot of people working out whether they were going to give up their citizenship or not. I'm also a big fan at some point, just on a completely sort of spin off that note, that we really look at how to do, I think there at some point needs to be some form of global citizenship in some ways. But I don't think today's sort of turning to nationalism is probably quite the right timing, but I don't think it's as long as way as some people maybe realize. And I also, growing up in the UK and being part of the EU and, everything that's happening now, I don't think a lot of us appreciated that this ability to just go and live and work in other places in Europe, just quite how amazing that was. I think there's a lot of foresight and also some problems, but a lot of foresight in that. You have a unique gift and use it well, helping people like you to such inspirational to people like me who want to contribute to humanity too. Thanks, Kat. I like that, Kat, INTP. How do you know he is the one? Top 5 tips. So I don't know when you joined. I mean, I laid my game plan, my way of looking at that out right at the beginning. So you might want to go back to the beginning of this video. Top 5 things. 1, that you feel authentic with him. 2, he's available for partnership. 3, you have an ability to deal with conflict and keep coming back together and kind of stabilize the relationship. 4, you have a knowing. You don't need to convince yourself. You're knowing from a deeper place. You don't have to believe he's the one. There's a kind of knowing that he's the one. 5, there's a lot of mystery to it. So 5 is there's some mystery, and it's probably beyond my kind of giving prescriptions. I would just say get out of your head, learn how to be objective, get friends and reflection to give you sobriety. If you've got to convince your friends that someone's good for you and they're all like, he's not good for you, that's a red flag, right? So it's sort of learning how to notice red flags, and then also learning how to notice, I mean, there's another way of looking at this, right? Which is a lot of women want to be claimed in relationship, right? And what that can mean is that a guy at some point says, hey, I think you're my person. I want to be with you. So that's another way, right? Is that there's something coming from his side of the fence where he's like, yeah, you, I want to be with you. I want to build a life with you. I want to share my life with you. So don't underestimate that. Like, when that information comes from someone, that can really have you notice, like, yeah, I want that as well. Or actually, no, I'm not available for that with you. Wendy Ann, you're grateful. I'm glad you found some awesomeness in this. I love this live chat. Yes. Hi, Jack. I think you're an awesome coach and so full of knowledge. When did you move to the US? So I moved to the US in 2012. I moved to be in relationship with my then wife, and it really spectacularly didn't work out. We totally fell in love and had a very sweet, harmonious connection. I think it was really important to both of our individual journeys and how things kind of unfolded. And we also didn't really have an ability to deal with conflict. And bottom line, honestly, when you look at it, is that I think I had some things outside. I wasn't really ready. I thought I was probably ready to settle down, and now I know that I wasn't. I was still a lot in my immature masculine, and ultimately, she actually decided to get remarried to a woman and is a lesbian. So there was lots of like unforeseeness in the connection. We are still on really good terms. It took a little bit to get to that, and I'm grateful for it. But I sort of have a little bit of proviso. I was in my late 20s, and that time in my life was a huge shift. Basically, everything that I'd known about myself was taken from me. I built a youth training business in the UK that I suddenly fell out of love with. Who I'd taken myself to be as a kind of entrepreneur and as a social entrepreneur and a change agent, that was kind of taken from me. It was like a huge identity shift. And my learning from that when I coach people who are in those situations is when you're in a huge identity shift, there are certain decisions that it might not be good to make because who you're becoming, you don't really know. And there's obviously a through line, right? There's the thread of Jackness that has existed probably, I don't know, since my incarnation in a physical form. But there are also these ways that a lot of who I was is different than who I am, and how I look at reality and what I care about and how I think of myself and how I think of the world is very different. So, yeah, all that to say, it can be really difficult if you fall in love with someone and you live in different countries. It's happened to me 3 times. The first time, wasn't super serious, but it creates this kind of doubt where it's like, is the relationship ending because we don't have the right to live in the same country? It's like it really makes me appreciate when people are like, I met the girl next door, right? Or I met someone at my local bar. I'm like, you don't know how easy you've had it. Oh my gosh. But each to their own. It's different paths. I have a very global outlook, and part of having a very global outlook is that you might find. I'm just going to move here to another seat because I'm hurting my back a bit here. You might find that if you are part of a each their own, and we have different paths. But I'm noticing that in this global reality, online dating, lots of people are in long distance relationships from people from very different countries and cultures, and worldviews is a big part of that, right? Like sometimes people fall in love with someone and it's like, they're from this traditional family where the marrying someone out of the culture just isn't available. So I'm really sensitive to the fact that there are all sorts of newness that we're kind of dealing with in relationship. And there was this quirk back in the day that this woman that I was seeing, this was in my earlier 20s, she was Bulgarian, and Bulgaria had just joined the European Union, but there's a delay until you get the kind of full work and live rights. And so in a sense, in the meantime, Bulgaria had gone backwards in terms of the ability to stay and live in England. And so she kind of had to go home. And I don't think it was really probably going to go anywhere, but it was hard for me to be like, I don't know if that's ended because she kind of knows she needs to go home, so she's not going to really invest, or because actually this wasn't really the right connection. And then more recently, I've been together with my wife for 2 years. We got married last year, and she had a very global kind of nomadic existence, and figuring out how to land in the same country is difficult. So any of you who've been there, I feel for you, and it gives me this kind of, when I really drop into it, it gives me a compassion for people, everything that's going on at the moment in terms of the world of immigration and borders. And I'm not even going to get into the specific views of that, but just to know there's a lot of very human stories that happen, and that it also gives you an appreciation when you've struggled for something. It gives you an appreciation of what it is. So I often say to people who are born in developed countries that we sometimes don't know what we're born into until you know that it might be taken away from you. All right, that was a little bit of my backstory. I really like this one guy, but I feel sort of he's overcompensating for something and turns me off. What do you think I should do? What do you think he's over compensating for? I'm curious about that. Like, what lets you know that he's overcompensating? Like, what is the experience, or what kind of comes up with you? You mean he's trying too hard? Is he trying to impress you too much? Maybe just give me a little bit of detail, because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole there. Chrissy, what a journey. Yeah, totally. It's been a real journey. Life is. Hello from Turkey. Awesome. Let me know if you've got any questions. I'll probably need to wrap up here by the 2-hour mark. So if you are here still and you have a question that you haven't asked, now would be a great time to ask it. I just want to say, like, I think I've done my best. I think I've pretty much kept up. If you've asked a question that hasn't been answered, feel free to repost it. Thank you for all of giving me a thumbs up and a like. We've still got over 80 of us here. That's awesome. I tried to not answer at such length that I couldn't keep up with your questions. And I think I've mostly been able to do that. I do just want to say, like, I'm scrolling back through here. I'm like, wow, we've got hundreds of comments here. That's so awesome. And it's really gratifying for me to have this level of question and this level of engagement. I love what you said about not doing conflict well. Yeah, I was naive about that. I think and that's not really, my parents, my sweet parents, my parents met at 18 and have been together ever since. And they are in their late 60s. And so it's not like I grew up in a situation where I never saw conflict. I did. But I think I just had such a high value on harmony. And I think I had this view that love is harmony. And now I see it very differently. I see that love is a lot of things. And I have a very different appreciation for loving the full spectrum of our human experience. So part of really loving yourself, in my view now, is that you actually love all your darkness. You love the places where you are short-sighted, where you're stilted, where you're defended, where you're wounded. You get to include all those things. And that love isn't some kind of ongoing, we feel loving towards each other. Yeah, of course, that's going to need to be in the mix. But it's actually loving the reality Like there's a love of reality of what is actually happening, what is actually going on. And if you are being harmonious on the surface, but underneath you're feeling resentful, or you're feeling unseen, or you're feeling anger, right? Which is the common one. Really, if someone is like, my life is always peaceful and harmonious, as a coach, I just go straight to, what's your relationship with anger? Tell me about your relationship with anger. And if you say, oh, I never get angry, you know, probabilistically, you've got some work to do around anger, right? Because for most of us, anger is a natural response to our boundaries not being honored. And it's very hard to always honor someone else's boundaries, or the way that you get around that is you come out of the game, right? So you're so underinvested in meaningful relationship or meaningful challenge in your life and love and work that you kind of get around it by being this sort of, I'll go with the flow and be easy. But it's not really true. That's what I've learned, that, if it's not to get off on being angry, it's just to say, if you're angry and you're not in contact with it, that's a problem, right? So a lot of us have a strategy of repression or dissociation, suppression of our anger, and the growth edge is to actually get in touch with it. And where that can be difficult is that in spiritual community, or people who are consider themselves on a path of evolution, sometimes I think there's this wrong view that, being angry isn't evolved. And I get it. Being really unskillful with our anger might not be evolved, but most of us have to admit that it's sometimes we are angry, or the appropriate response is anger, or that we're not in touch with it, and we've just so lost our own preference and our own authenticity and desire that we are living in some kind of falsehood, so to speak. Serkan, I'm Muslim. Hey, yeah. So I don't know if what I was saying about kind of, I don't know if you're from a kind of traditional Muslim cultural context and what that means in terms of relationships. I'm curious because I know that it's sometimes difficult. I've also been working with people, not necessarily just in the Muslim context, but where they've grown up in a certain tradition, or they've grown up in a certain religious worldview, or a way that their culture is. And then what they're struggling is that they're kind of in love with someone and that doesn't fit in. And just how do you deal with that? And I'm not saying I know how to deal with that all the time. I'm just saying I'm honoring that that's kind of difficult. And sometimes people are choosing between the sort of truth of their heart versus the honoring their parents and they're honoring their culture. And I'm saying that in all compassion, really. We do chat, but we're busy listening to you. Cool. Yeah, it's also a little bit of a skill to kind of chat and look and chat and look. So I kind of chat and then I look. So thanks for bearing with me. Thank you, Jack. Very helpful even to a 6-year-old lady like me, for the right one for me after many years single after divorce. Yeah, totally. And I know that as we get older, there can sometimes be more to just, to meld two lives together can have its own set of challenges. What can be really beautiful, I've found, I've coached a lot of people in their 60s, is that sometimes if you're kind of set enough in your life and you kind of know enough who you are, there's this real opportunity for an authenticity that may not have been available earlier in life, right? That you were still trying to prove who you were, or you hadn't really figured out who you were, or you just hadn't had the time and resources to do enough self-awareness work, right? So there's a reason why a lot of retreats are filled with, in my experience, a lot of retreats actually are filled with older women who are doing the work, because they actually have the security, or they have the time, or they're in a place in their career where they don't necessarily have to work full time, or whatever it is that allows a little bit more of the deeper work. So that's also a really beautiful opportunity to maybe share that with someone. Truth, those of us with bad love blueprints need advice like this to understand what reality of healthy love actually looks like. Yeah, totally. I think we need culturally, what I'm excited about, I have no idea how likely this is anytime soon, is movies that just tell a more real picture of love. I'm kind of done, with a sort of Hollywood rom-com view of reality, and to actually show that most people who have had a long-term relationship, marriage, they've had to figure some stuff out, right? They've had to figure out how to be with another human being. I was lucky. One of my earlier mentors, when I was a social entrepreneur in London, in England, in my 20s, I managed to get as one of my mentors a guy who was a former global chief executive officer of Adidas, the shoe company. So this guy had done huge things in business, company turnarounds, mergers, all of it. And he said to me, Jack, the hardest thing is to be in relationship with another human being. And I couldn't really get it then, because I'd mostly had these sort of like harmonious relationships that I probably wasn't ultimately, my heart wasn't fully committed and invested in. And I'm like, wow, yeah, he was telling it as he is. He could go around the world, do all sorts of things in business. But the hardest thing was to really figure out reality with one other person. And I kind of get it. It's like, that's where the work is sometimes. Even, for me, as someone, who's been involved in global citizenship and world peace and some of these grandiose ideas, it's like, figure it out with one person. Figure it out with one person, because if you can't do that, it's so much harder to do it anywhere else. It's like a start at home philosophy. And to not be hard on yourself, but just to realize, there's a lot of compromise, negotiation, authenticity, growth that just goes into really being with someone in an authentic way. Where am I from? I'm from England and I live in America. Why is it so hard to walk away from a relationship that you know is not healthy and good for you? I mean, that's a great question. A lot of us, I'm sure, can relate to that question. My former self can relate to that question. Sometimes it's because you haven't experienced it before, right? So there's a kind of arrestingness that's happening that it's like, I have no pattern for this. I just know that I keep being drawn back to the kind of like a moth to a flame, right? There's a reason that expression exists. And sometimes it's because you haven't gotten clear yet that something can be both very arresting and not good for you. And when you really get like, I'm drawn to it, just like, anyone that's got some kind of addiction or propensity in a certain direction, you might be drawn to something. You might be drawn to alcohol or drugs or porn or any sort of thing, but you kind of realize, actually that's not good for me, but I might still be being drawn. So there's a little bit of see it clearly, get support, right? Allow people to support you into what's good for you. Sometimes you just need to run enough karma with the person, right? That there's something that until you run that cycle enough, then you complete the learning lesson and then the relationship dissolves. So we call that karmic relationship. Sometimes there's just something you're going to learn with someone and it might not be pretty. It might be really excruciatingly hard, but you kind of just got to go through it. So there's also a little bit of that. So don't be too hard on yourself. But if you repeat that pattern, you keep doing it, it might be because you've got to learn how to be in your own backbone more, right? You've got to sort of inhabit self more. There might be you're a little over there with other. And this can even happen for people who are very independent and career-minded. And in their day-to-day life, they're super solid in themselves. But when love comes and someone starts putting their attention on you, that goes out of the window and another pattern takes over. And it might replicate some things that happened earlier in your childhood, right? So it's sort of freedom to learn something that you might have to learn. There's a stronger boundary I need to have where actually I trust my higher self, right? If you really trust your higher self, there might be all sorts of things that you're attracted to, but you're like, I just know that that's not really going anywhere fast. It can take time. It also could be because someone is available in the way that a caregiver was available for you. There's something we call, it's actually from the world of neurolinguistic programming. It's called love equals. My business partner Clayton's really into this. And it's basically like love equals whatever happened in your childhood. Whatever happened in your childhood, at some level, the child interprets that was love, right? It might be you got all the attention. It might be you got no attention. It might be that you got abuse. It might be that you got a parent that used you for their own emotional support. It could be anything. But at some level, the child encodes that as love unconsciously. And then someone else 30, 50 years later does the same thing. And an unconscious part of you says, that's love. That's love. Right? That's the suffering of love, as we call it, that you have some equation. It's not really an equation, but you have a belief or you have a wiring kind of in you that isn't helping you. And you might have to bring that into consciousness, right? You might have to sort of see clearly, like, you know what, this person's abusive to me and I keep going back for more. Don't be hard on myself. Don't need to beat myself up, but what's really going on there? Let me notice. Maybe I can see, I inquire into it and I notice, wow, after a while, that's just like my dad did or my uncle did or my best friend did or whoever did. And I've encoded that and I need to relax it. Or it might be that someone loves you in a way that's so 180 from your childhood that has its own arresting, right? Maybe your parents gave you space and now there's someone that wants to spend every moment with you and you have no idea what to do with that. Or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe your mom or dad was very doting on you and you're now with someone that's giving you distance and you don't know what to do with that. All of these things are kind of polarities at some level. You're learning how to be with space and connection. You're learning how to be with other and self. Most of us are either over there with other or we're more over here with self, right? Ultimately, if I'm super over here with self, I'm a narcissist. If I'm super over there with other, we're not as hard on that in society, but that's kind of often what it takes to support some of the other patterns is that I'm out to lunch. I'm not present here. I'm just over there. I'm helping you, giving to you, healing to you. And you need to learn how to relax that impulse. And awareness is curative. At some level, it only comes from realizing, there's a thing I do that's not super skillful and I might want to learn how not to do that. So don't be hard on yourself. It's learning. Even if you are the moth to the flame and you've done it 27 times, you can do something different on time 28. Maybe even 28, you lose it. And 29, you do different. Maybe 32, you do different. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about realizing that consciousness grows and different parts of us may want different things. The animal sexual part of you may want something very different than what your soul wants. And most of us have massive paradox and contradiction within us. Part of self-love is, I think, learning how to be with that contradiction, that you'll sometimes do things that are a bit dumb based on the higher self, but you still do them. And over time, the more you practice, the more you see, the less you learn how to do that. Annette, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad that makes sense. Gavin, thank you. I'm glad that's true. Janice, thanks. Great advice. I do not try to be too hard on myself. Yeah, that. And I actually think relatively my inner critic probably hasn't been my hardest structure. So for a lot of people, that is such an edge of learning. Catherine, hi. Thanks for sending love. Freedom from abuse. Glad you tuned in the right time. I've been dating a guy for about a year and he's great, but there's still like there's something missing. How can you tell if it's self-sabotage, immature illusion of a loving relationship, or just not it? So that's a great question. I imagine there's a lot of people that can relate to that question. Here's what I'd encourage you to look at. What's going on in the rest of your life? Is there a narrative or an easy felt sense that there's something missing? Sometimes something missing is the dominant trance that we're in as a person. Right. And it's a sort of pervasive background sense. I'm not making it wrong, but it can just be the way that your personas or defenses kind of constellate that there's something missing and I kind of get fixated. So notice if that's true. That may or may not be true. But if that is true, then I would get curious to do some work on it in your life more generally and then see what's happening in relationship. I'd also encourage you to trust yourself. You know, most of us, I think at some level, we know if there's something missing in a relationship, even if we can't put our finger on it. There's a sort of intuitive knowing. And then eventually you meet someone and you're like, yeah, I don't have that question. So if that's really coming up for you, there's also an encouragement to kind of trust it. But make sure it's not based upon a too high set of standards, right? This can happen a lot. People say, I just have really high standards. And sometimes I have high standards can be a proxy for I'm actually protecting myself and not allowing the right person in to love me, right? So it can just be a good thing to kind of check in on there. Obviously, if you've had low standards, right, where you've kind of just accepted breadcrumbs from a guy or emotionally unavailable guys, raising your standards will serve you. But if your thing is you normally have, quote, really high standards, but you find it hard to be in relationship with a real human, that can be something to relax. Okay. Yes, I'm totally over the Hollywood rom-com mumbo jumbo too. Yeah, wouldn't it be great? I think if enough of us start kind of wanting and buying something else, I'm sure eventually we'll get the movies that we deserve. In answering the question, what he might be overcompensating for, I'm not really sure, but the sudden he wants to help me with things he doesn't actually do, like yard work. Oh, well, maybe enjoy that while it lasts. Maybe have a real conversation. Maybe there's something to discover. Maybe there is some other agenda and that you're tuning into that you just don't know what it is and that you actually need to find out from him what's going on. And maybe if you can do it from there's nothing wrong. I'm curious, like bring your curiosity, not your judgment. That might be a good place to start. All right, we're getting to the last few minutes here. How much do you think of drawing the right person's inside job, vibration, alignment, releasing junkie liminaries more so than the right one than anything? Yeah, that's a super great question. Here's the way that I orient to that. I'm not saying that this is right. I'm just saying here's the way that I orient to it in case it's useful for you. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do to be more relationship ready, right? It's partly why I created a program called Relationship Ready, Becoming the One, that is to do with what's everything that's on your side of the fence. Here, I'll actually just put a little link in here in case any of you are interested in that and didn't know about it. I didn't think to mention that. So the reason to be relationship ready is you kind of notice, hey, there's some patterns. I need to clear some things up. So you start to clear up what's on your side of the fence. You start to notice, hey, yeah, I keep attracting this kind of guy. And so I do something different. I notice I attract different guys. You start to maybe look at where you might be bringing wounds and defenses that you've unconsciously been in that you haven't even noticed. Or maybe you're playing an unconscious role. And you start to notice, oh, yeah, I've always been the healer and the caregiver, or I've always been the good girl, and I'm now going to grow up and grow out of that. So that is half of it, right? Then I think the other half, and I'm not saying this is a real 50-50, this is more kind of art and mystery than science, I think. The other half is life is bigger than you, right? Life has its own understanding. Life has its own mystery. Life has its own timing. So I think you do the work, you show up, and then you let life have its way with you, which means you surrender. You don't force, you don't control, you don't know. You let life show you, you let it be revealed. So if you can do those two things, it's kind of like in business, I used to call this surrendered entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, you make it happen. You bring your passion, you make it happen, but you also surrender. You realize that if you're always making it happen, you're kind of controlling, and that's not really a way to trust life. So life may have a partnership in store for you. It may be next week, it may be next year, maybe next decade, it may be all, both and who knows? It's just you'll know when you know. So you get more comfortable with your unknowing, and you really tune in to notice, is this a guy that I actually want to be with. And if it's sort of like life, show me, right? If I'm meant to know, let me know. If this is my guy, let me know, reveal that, let that be in my heart, let that be obvious to me. So it's kind of a both and balance, I think. I don't believe that it's only an inside job, or let me put it this way: the danger of if people take it to only be an inside job all the time, and there's not this also trusting life, is you kind of can get self-critical. Like, why haven't I made this happen? I've done the work. Why is it not happening? And there's a kind of impatience and a frustration. And I don't think impatience and frustration is the easiest place to manifest what you want. It's a bit easier if you can go like, I've got an open hand, an open bucket. Fill it for me. Thanks for the advice. Yes, you're welcome. I'm glad you found it great advice. Don't be too hard on yourself. That's super. Yes, we do. That is so important to trust your gut, because deep down you know. I actually think that's true. A lot of us know a lot of things, but we're so used to thinking and analyzing, overanalyzing. And as a culture at large, I'm interesting this kind of sunset changing light here. As a culture at large, I don't think that we're always the best. Let me think, this is the best way. I don't think we're always the best at honoring knowing. I don't think that is part of the conversation where people say, oh, well, what do you know about that? What is your gut telling you? What's your intuition? I'd love for that to be part of the conversation more. Hi, Jack. Never seen you live before. Always resonate with everything you say and how you say it. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for coming on live. I appreciate it. Can your body pick up on who your soulmate is? The energy is high yet calming. We never touch. We just talk. Well, I think your body, I think, I'm not an expert on this. I think there's kind of two types of intuition, right? There's a kind of gut instinct, sort of bodily intuition, like a bodily knowing, where you're just like, I just kind of gut feel. And I'm not saying that everything that's a gut feel is necessarily right. I think it's always good to bring online as much intelligence as you can. So there's your gut, there's your heart, right? There's some things that only your heart can know. And there's also your head, not just your thinking mind, but what we call open head center, which means where you can receive higher mind, or another way of saying that sometimes is intuition as well, where things just kind of drop in. You just kind of get a sense of something. So I also think that kind of intuition is important. So your body can pick up on it, yes, but I don't think it's sort of like it's part of the picture, not the whole picture. And I would really encourage you, if you really think someone might be your soulmate, to really get some high quality in-person time with them, and probably to allow some touch and for some other kinds of information to come in. Everyone has some kind of addiction to something too much. Can you match someone else? I want to make sure I know what you mean by that. I do think we probably vary in terms of how addictive our personalities are, or how much that's a thing. I often preach. I often invite, at my best, I invite in myself and others sobriety. And sobriety is actually right relationship. And right relationship sobriety, some people think of that as like abstinence or the absence of right, because it's like, oh, if someone's an alcoholic, they go sober. But real sobriety is about right relationship, not too much, not too little, right? Not too much talking, not too much listening. Right relationship is, not too little food, but not too much food, not too little variety, not too much variety. So that's how I think of sobriety. I'm curious if there's anything else you want to add to the addiction question. I can answer it. If there is no chemical chemistry but a good man, should I pass? Just friends? Yes, probably. There can sometimes be a physical connection that grows over time. I think that is possible. But most of us, I think, there's like a minimum effective dose, right, of kind of attraction or sexual chemistry. You can, I sort of feel like there's a minimum spark that you kind of off the bat, there's a kind of attraction, for most of us at least. And that can be hard to replace, because it's sort of like, in some ways, I've distinguished in this call, partnership, lovership, companionship. And really, in an ideal partnership, we want to have the companionship and the lovership. We want to have someone we look at them and say, yeah, you're a really good friend to me. I really like spending time with you. And there's also a sexual component, like, yeah, I want you to be my lover. So when that's not there, I'm really curious what's going on. Sometimes it means that there's actually not a heart connection, right? Because for some people, it's the emotional heart connection that really also contributes to them wanting to be more intimate. Sometimes when there's no physical chemistry, it's like there's a kind of intimacy that's not really happening. Again, dry throat here. So that can be something to be aware of. Need to send out the universe if someone is not for you. If someone is for you, they will come. Yeah, I'm a kind of a believer that, it's like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. When you're ready for partnership, sometimes it appears. But also, God's delays are not God's denials, or however you would think of that. It's not like it always manifests immediately. So I think you sometimes have to cultivate a long-term view that allows for some patience. You're right. When we ought to trust our gut instinct, but what we want, and we make bad choices. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because sometimes our own fantasy about what we want in a relationship gets in the way, right? So it's like, I so badly want this thing, and I'm trying to fit this thing in front of me into the thing that I want, and they're actually not the same thing. So it takes a little bit of wisdom there to know sometimes, yeah, I like this person. Maybe we have good chemistry. Maybe we're attracted. Maybe if they were available, I would be with them, but they're just not. And I have to have that sobriety and objectivity. Um, Thanks, Jack. We've held hands a few times. The energy intensifies when I'm present with him. I have this overwhelming sense of peace and calm that comes over me. Never had anything with anyone. That sounds awesome. Maybe that's really nourishing for you. Maybe that's exactly what you need right now. Um, Maybe it's just one to notice how it unfolds. I'd be really curious for you to stay in touch with what your authentic desire is, right? Maybe as that energy intensifies, maybe you want to be more connected, or you want to be more intimate, or you want to, deepen the conversation about what might be available or possible, and sometimes there's connections which are just their own mystery, and they're about bringing some flavor to your life that you haven't had before, and you don't want to make it into something it's not. So really just permission to follow the intelligence, follow the unfolding, and to stay true to your own desire and heart in it. Wow, you're definitely a great example of someone's follow calling. Thank you. Yeah, I feel called. I do my best. Some days are more obvious than others, and it definitely has not been a linear path for me. There's been a lot of just noticing where the resonance is and where the response is, and I feel grateful that I get to talk about relationships, and I talk about it from a place of not that this has been an easy ride for me. I think I used to think that because I was somewhat in my heart and able to attune and connect to people and be kind of people oriented, that I was good at relationship. And it had me to really step back and realize, oh, being good at connecting with people is a very different thing than being good at friendship even, and certainly a different thing than being good at intimate relationship. And so I had to kind of drop the story on myself there, that I was actually maybe more smart in relationship than I actually was. And life knocked that out of me, right? The school of hard knocks of many failed relationships, many relationships that started with a big bang and went nowhere, getting my heart hurt, breaking other people's hearts, being in partnership with someone that turned out to be a lesbian. I mean, I've been there and done it. So yeah, I'm grateful when my own struggles help myself, but also when they really help other people. So you're so good. I've got to watch it all. Great. Yeah, please go back. And we've covered a lot of territory in this. There's a lot of questions. I was thinking today, the biggest practice of love is with a real person. Yeah, totally. Two humans trying to be real. It's awesome. And it also brings up a lot. So go steady with yourself. And ideally what we want to find is someone that we can play with, right? Someone who also wants to do the work with us. Relationships can be oriented to different things. Some people want a relationship where the really elevated value is the sexual lovership, right? Where they want the energetic polaric flow of masculine and feminine. That's the highest value. Some people want a relationship where the highest value is stability. They really want someone that's just going to be there through thick and thin. Some people want a relationship to anchor a family. Some people want all those things. People want a relationship that's really going to grow them. And I think probably most of you in this community are looking at relationship in that way. And you realize relationship might be your biggest missing piece, so to speak, or the biggest block in your life, but it's also the surface that is going to grow you the most. So that's the beauty of it, right? Where your challenge becomes your biggest expression of emerging consciousness. The place that's blocked you this whole time, you actually learn something and you're like, wow, that opened my eyes so much more than other things that I can do, but they're not the same kind of challenge. I know, for example, I can learn languages, right? It's one of the things that may come a little easier to me than some other learning or some other people, but it's not the same challenge as learning about a relationship. It's the things that you don't have control over learning, right? Like another person you don't have control over. That's sometimes the hardest learning, because it's like, wow, there's going to be things brought to me that I don't even know are going to be reflected back to me, and I'm still going to show up, and I'm still going to love myself and do my best. So yeah, all right. I'm going to call it quits there. I was originally going to come on for like 15 to 30 minutes, and here we are at 2 hours, 18 minutes. So I'm super grateful for all of you that hung around for the whole thing. I'm grateful for those of you that dropped in, those of you that joined us and left, those of you that are here now. Thanks for your questions. If I didn't get to them, feel free to post them. When I stop this, I think the chat will then revolve over to just normal posting on the videos, but I really do my best to get to all the questions and comments that people leave on my videos. So just feel free, we'll get to it, and I will give you a response. Annette, good luck with your date. Ali, absolutely, amen. So yeah, here's thanking and blessings and appreciation to all of you. Thanks for being here, and I look forward to doing this again with you sometime soon. All right, go well. You're welcome. It's funny. YouTube is